Sword of Coming Chapter 982. The white-haired boy sitting in the doorway to bask in the sun at the New Year's shop in Dragon Lane looked a little listless. When he saw Qin Pingon, who came here to check the accounts, he just murmured the old ancestor of the hidden official. Compared with the past, it is slightly different. In the two adjacent shops, there are more long wooden benches, which are the most common in rural villages. Qin Pingon sat on the side, shook his green shirt and long coat, raised his legs and asked with a smile, "Would you like to go to Tongyi's house to practice? There is a small cave there by Xian and Qing Chaolu are a few a child who is now practicing swordsmanship in it. I can ask Cui Dongshan to build a dojo mansion for you. The money I will come out, the entire sect hundreds of miles in radius, are now their own territory. You are there if you are interested. You can also give instructions to Qing Chaolu and their practice. Among them there is a little girl named Chai Wu. She is very talented in Taoism. She is Wei Xian's great disciple. On the top of the mountain you can tell Cui Dongshan, it is my intention, let him directly allocate it to you, and it will be the beginning of the celebration. The identity of the genealogy on the Qingping Peak Patriarch Hall is enshrined as a guest and you can choose. In the future, if you meet someone with good aptitude and want to accept a disciple, you can do whatever you want. Because of the arrival of Beijing, it is easy to attract some interested people to spy on the side of riding Dragon Lane. On the other hand, Qingping Sword Sect can hide people. A sword cultivator at the peak of the Ascension realm, especially a wild demon clan who has lived for thousands of years, is far more attractive than a new sect in terms of identity and strength. The white-haired boy still couldn't keep his spirits up and said sickly, "The road is too far, I can't go. It's good to be a handyman here. I've gotten used to it. It's better to start over there, and it's more troublesome to start over there and teach others to teach boxing. I'm not good at this. Ancestor Ingguan, you can't like the new and hate the old, just drive me away with a few more things like Cui Huan and Xiego. If you don't say anything else, just my loyalty and no semicolons." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "If you don't want to move the nest, forget it." The white-haired boy twitched his nose, looked left and right and sneakily took out a booklet from his sleeve. Fist Manual Live. There are a total of 36 pictures, that is, 36 boxing moves, and the world is endless. Wufu can count the famous skills, the good stuff at the bottom of the box, and the general good boxing moves which are not qualified to be recorded in the book. How someone's vision is, how critical, you know better than me. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Given it to me a few years ago, it's still useful, but it doesn't mean much now." That being said, the movement of reaching out his hand is not slow, and Qin Pingon put it in his sleeve without even looking at it. This sentence is not entirely cheap and good, just like Pushun's boxing from the 6 pictures of Immortals. The benefit to Qin Ping's boxing skills is actually extremely limited. If it is not necessary to teach people boxing, Qin Pingon may not be. It will take so much effort to perfect and improve Pushun boxing, trying to lower the threshold of learning boxing for ordinary martial artists, and then compile it into a book. It seems that the more you learn boxing, the higher your realm will be, and the more you will be able to feel the value of Xianxia boxing. Of course, Qin Pingon also wants to compile a boxing manual that is completely his own, so that the pure martial arts of the two disciples can follow this boxing manual in the next 10 years, centuries and thousands of years, gradually practice and steadily climb higher and then become like Pushun. Yunkatang is generally, the children of later generations can continuously improve the boxing manual, and the youth is better than the blue. Qin Pingon suddenly asked, "Have you heard of the alternative views on the third layer of the Wufu's end?" The white-haired boy shook his head. "I don't practice martial arts and boxing. I can't tell you this. I guess if I did, I might not take it seriously." Qin Pingon apologized. "I shouldn't be talking about this." The white-haired boy grinned. "It doesn't look like the ancestor of the hidden official. Under the return to the truth from the 9 realms of martial arts to the first level of Qixing, I still attach great importance to it, especially Qixing. When a martial artist has reached the level of returning to the truth, he needs to fuse his own martial arts experience, pilgering techniques and boxing techniques into a furnace, and seek a condensed word to prove the phrase, returning to the original and returning to the truth. What is God's arrival? Qin Pingon is still groping and he can only figure it out on his own. There is no other way. Back then, when I practiced boxing on the 2nd floor of the bamboo building, the old man never talked about it, and the occasional words were mostly unpleasant words such as "you, Qin Pingon, who had a physique like paper and a sloppy mind. Waste, dare to look forward to the 10 realms above the mountain? If you can make a half-fold in this life and become a warrior of the 5 realms, it is time to burn high incense." From Qin Pingan's point of view, Zhou Xian lies in the realm of the far-traveling realm every day, and as a result he thinks about the mysteries and barriers of the first level of returning to the real world. Fist has weight but law cannot compete. This truth ordinary people say lack of confidence. But Zhou Xian doesn't need to open his mouth, that's the reason. After all, he was the first martial madman in the history of Lotus Flower-blessed land who slaughtered the rest of the 9 people in the world. Zhou Lian's spirit is so high and his state of mind is so broad that even Qin Pingan dare not say that he can see it for real. The white-haired boy changed from sitting to squatting, maybe because he was taller. Then 2 and 2 were silent, basking in the warm sunshine of the early spring together lazily. Qin Pingan traveled thousands of miles. His thoughts were like stepping on the skin of a watermelon, thinking of where is where. In Zen Buddhism there have always been 2 theories: press the head on the head, and the original face. Qin Pingan suddenly remembered the many broken statues in the Tomb of the Gods. Seems that there is a statue of A with 3 heads and 6 arms casting magic. Shaking his sleeves, Qin Pingan closed his eyes, meditated for a moment, hesitated after opening his eyes and did not get up. He just sat and choked the dharmas and dharma seals. However, Qin Pingan quickly stopped. The white-haired boy also pretended to be unaware, and when Qin Pingan stopped the series of dazzling movements, the white-haired boy squatting on the long tree suddenly laughed. 1 + 1 = 2, and children in open-crotch pants know that 5 + 5 = 10, and the answer is obvious. But you say 1 + 1 = 2, + 3 = 5, + 2 + 3 = 10. There will be people who insist that it is equal to 8 or equal to 9, but it is not a 1, a 2. 1 + 10 is 11, 1 is not 11 and 10 is not 11. If 10 is less, everyone can see it, so this kind of flaw is not very common, but 1 is less and it is relatively hidden. 10 is still like this. What about 110,001,000,000? So someone said that the world's knowledge is determined to do subtraction. It is best to reduce it to 1 and nothing is left. Almost no one is willing to do it. Additive. Qin Pingan first smiled knowingly, then laughed out loud, then his whole face was full of smiles and finally he laughed out loud. Instead, it was the white-haired boy's turn to feel strange. Is it funny? This was actually just a weird statement made by Wu Shuangjiang back then. At that time, the maid of the palace, who was called Natural, didn't think it was funny. It's just that Wu Shuangjiang is thinking wildly. Anyway, he has always been like this. Qin Pingan is of course a very reserved and restrained person. He is not the kind of person who shows his happiness and anger, but he is not the kind of person who is gloomy and silent for a long time. Even in the prison of the old deaf boy on the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Qin Pingan will also have fun in the midst of suffering, and he often does some inexplicable antics. In Qin Ping's own words, people can endure hardship, but they must not have the appearance of suffering. But in the memory of the white-haired boy, Qin Pingan laughed so hard that it was never before. Qin Pingan was really not pretending but was really happy. He finally stopped his laughter and nodded. It's funny. The white-haired boy Nunuzui said, You are all weirdos. Qin Pingan crossed Erlang's legs, put his hands on his knees and said with a smile, Scholars quarrel even if it is a battle of gentlemen, often the least like to follow the steps and reason with each other. I am really not good at it. It is rare to go from start to finish. It's all reasonable and there are not many examples. Of course, the Goose Lake debate can be counted as one second class. In the past, the dispute between Su Zimen and each other's poetry style was also very good. Once again first class. I started to talk about benevolence, righteousness and morality. The worst thing is probably to talk about personal morality. The fun part of world affairs is that it is often the last one, but it is the most lethal and has been around for the longest time, such as father-in-law picking ashes, torture prostitutes girls. Every time I mention it, I will first make a conclusion and then push back. Anyway, since there is a loss in virtue, all knowledge must be dross. Where can I know the specific development of Confucianism, the Confucian scholars and sages of all dynasties? Of course, I mean those who are really responsible. How many scholars have they tried, how many detours they have made, and how much effort and cost they have paid for it. I really don't know what it will be like now, 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now. In the history of Buddhism, it is not only the difference between Mahayana and Theravada, but also the most spectacular line of Zen Buddhism. In fact, it is very different from the earlier teachers of earth theory, profound Buddhist scriptures and strict lawyers. There are big differences even within the Zen Buddhism. There are constant disputes and mutual criticism, so there are so many koans, Denglu, Songgu Niangu and Kenhua too. Just like Qin Pingon in the Summer Palace he often met. Repeated Bayan Lu, Empty Valley Collection, and Songrong in Lu. If you don't like reading, you will naturally recognize that the book says that you are a scholar. If you like reading, you will naturally be happy that reading is for the next life. But whether you like reading or not has little to do with what kind of person you become. Probably just like the old abbot of the Ohua Fudi Xinxiang temple said in the past, how we view the world is how the world views us. The white-haired boy said indifferently, do you have to read more? Qin Pingon smiled and said, when I say reading I don't just mean books. Being able to live an unhappy life calmly, Qin Pingon thought he couldn't do it. But Qin Pingon had seen such a person. During the years when Shujian Lake was attacking the wall, I once saw a poor old woman in clean clothes. So much so that Qin Pingon would think that such people are bodhisattvas in the suffering world. When a child grows up, especially after the parents leave, it is like a door. Without a door, death stands outside the door and it is the person's turn to look at him. The white-haired boy turned his head and said softly, Ancestor Ingguan, wipe away your tears. Qin Pingon was stunned for a moment, then raised his hand, but before he could touch his face he laughed angrily and slapped it with a slap. The white-haired boy tilted his head to avoid it in a good mood and laughed out loud. Xiego was not at the shop, so he probably went to post those dog skin plasters again, and fought wits with the wealthy people in Fulu Street and Taoya Lane. Qin Pingon stood up, walked into the shop and Sure Ro, the shopkeeper, immediately took out the account book. Qin Pingon stood by the counter, flipping through the account book, glanced at the child who was looking down at a strange novel and asked, Junchin, listen to me. Shopkeeper Li of Red Candle Town said, do you like to buy books there on credit? To let it is very difficult for this great disciple who started the mountain himself to call himself patriarch on his own initiative. Zhou Junchin was a little guilty and he acted as a little mute, trying to pretend to be deaf and mute to get through. If Qin Pingon talked to him about his seniority, Zhou Junchin would never be embarrassed. Only if it had something to do with money, the child would be a little bit lacking in courage. Qin Pingon said, I passed by the bookstore before and I helped you settle the account for the dozens of taels of silver, and I also paid you some in advance. Don't owe money for books in the future. The little bought books. He was very generous and bold and he didn't know who taught him. Pei Qian, who is a teacher for his children, would never teach him like this. When Zhou Junchin heard this he smiled brightly. On the patriarch side it was rare to have a sincere smile. Unexpectedly the patriarch immediately added, I mean, don't give credit to the bookstore, it doesn't sound good if it spreads out. There is no problem with owing me money. You can pay it back slowly in the future, just deduct it from your monthly salary. Shiro couldn't help laughing. The little mute who talked to her about this matter was very confident. Originally she wanted to borrow money from Master Pei Qian to repay the debt. According to Zhou Junchin's small calculation, if you are a master, lend money to apprentice, are you embarrassed to ask for a debt in the future? As a result, I was stabbed by this patriarch today, and this confused account suddenly became unambiguous. Zhou Junchin has regretted his bowels now, and he would not have bought so many if he knew it earlier. Qin Pingon asked again, who came up with the signboard of Nujiadu? Zhou Junchin said in a big way, I came up with the method alone. It has nothing to do with others. After all, the child is not old-fashioned and there is no silver tail here. Shiro was a little worried immediately. The rules of Luopa Mountain were extremely loose and true. But when Qin Pingon, the mountain owner, once identified something, he would definitely take it seriously. The little mute was still not afraid at all and was very annoyed. Sure enough, he was not on the right track with this grandfather and master. How could the master find such a master? Shiro stretched out her hand and gently tugged the child's sleeve under the counter, motioning him to be soft on the mountain master's side and don't be stubborn. Unexpectedly, Qin Pingon nodded. I'm still too petty. I can go back and make up for Yuan Lingdian of Jishuan Peak in Beiju Luzhou, and Sword Immortal Wei Jin in Fengxue Temple. They are all our guest ministers of Luopao Mountain, and they are the ones that are officially registered. Even if I pass Nujiadu in the future, I will not ask someone to ask for guilt when I see the sign. There is also Tongis Hao Yuguazong, the two direct disciples of Wei Sect Master, Wei Gusu and Wei Xianyu. I believe they will be very famous in the future. The Land Sword Fairy, you can also fill in the name. Remember to state the realm. Now they are all golden pills. Then add brackets after the name and realm. The child asked in confusion. The Sword Fairy will be the future? What's the use of writing your name now? Does it take up space? If you don't in the pit, it will bring down the value of other shop customers in vain. What do you know, it's useless to make up later. When they enter the nascent soul realm or even the jade pure realm, there is a saying that they can break the realm by eating the cakes from the New Year's shop. Zhou Xian suddenly widened his eyes. Can he still play like this? I thought that Xiego was shameless enough to make money, but I never thought that this one was going too far. Qin Pingon reminded. It's just a suggestion, it has nothing to do with me. The little mute grinned, making an exception with a bright smile on Qin Pingan's side. This grandfather who has been away from home all day, really still has a few brushes. No wonder so many hills can be bought. Qin Pingon smiled and said, I don't talk about the achievements of practice, but only about business. You and I and your master are far from each other. The little mute automatically ignored this sentence, thought for a while, thought about it seriously and asked, won't it be taboo on the mountain for such nonsense? Qin Pingon leaned against the counter and flipped through the thin account book. What's the taboo? This is called a good talk. I'll bet with you that in the future the two Xianxian who are both surnamed Wei will definitely come to the shop to buy cakes. And not at all angry. Don't gamble a penny. Small bet on happiness, just a few dollars and you can count whether you win or lose. The white-haired dwarf Melon at the door said that you were in the Great Wall of Swordchi and you were very famous. You have a share of all the new and old and you can beat people with one punch and you have an invincible player and your gambling quality is very poor. As long as those who go to the gambling table come to kill one, come to two to kill a pair, come to three to kill all. Qin Pingon smiled. The white-haired boy outside the door who was basking in the sun immediately became anxious, jumped to the door and scolded, Little mute, please keep your mouth clean. When did I say that the hidden official ancestor is extremely bad at gambling? The little mute snorted. You mean that Qin Pingon is very good at gambling, they'll just listen to it the other way around. The white-haired boy was unable to refute the fallacy of the little mute for a while and his eyes complained, The ancestor of the hidden official, I am wronged, I am wronged. Umbrella Qin Pingon ignored that living treasure and just reached out and rubbed Zhou Xian's head. You can be skinny, just be rude on my side and have the ability to say such things in front of your master. The little mute laughed and said, My brain doesn't look like some people are lacking in roots. The white-haired boy put his hands on his hips. Little mute, if you continue to talk like in such a yin and yang manner, be careful when I scold you. To be honest, I usually quarrel with you. I deliberately let you and only exerted less than 10% of your skill. The corner of the little mute's mouth was raised and his face was full of disdain. Then scold, just scold. If you have the ability, the 18th generation of the ancestors will scold them together. Anyway, my master is not here, you are afraid of a hammer. The white-haired boy is really good, he will look at people sideways. Who does he learn? Who teaches? It's just that when the white-haired boy found out that another person was squinting at him, he stopped immediately, sniffled, wrinkled his face, looked up at the sky and felt bitter in his heart. Ro folded her hands on the counter, watching the big and small gags, her face full of smiles. Qin Pingon planned to go to the shop next door to see. Cui Huahuan from Chaotu shop would follow Hongxia and Yunzi to Xindu Mountain, but the girl would become Cui Dongshan's direct disciple. Brother and sister who have been separated for many years, thanks to Cui Dongshan who can think of it. Ro suddenly said in her heart. Shanu Pei Qian asked someone to send me a box of rouge before, thank you. It was no longer her usual hoarse and low voice, but a soft and waxy female voice. Qin Pingon smiled and nodded, don't be polite to her. When Pei Qian was at the shop, there was a short period of time when he was studying in a school, that is, at that time Pei Qian began to get close to Ro. After hesitating for a while, Qin Pingon asked in his heart, Ro, do you want to change a skin bag and restore the appearance of a woman? In addition to the fox skin beauty talisman on Pei Xiang, there is also a secret method of Yezigang on Xindu Mountain. The talisman you make will allow you to change your residence. Ro shook her head and said, No need, Mountain Master, I've gotten used to it for so many years and I really don't think there's anything wrong with it. Besides, being in this immortal slough every day is something that a chi practitioner can't even dream of. Excellent dojo. It was rare for Zhou Xian to discuss matters with Qin Pingon in a serious manner, and he even used an honorary title. Master Patriarch, since you are so good at making money, why don't you help our New Year's shop in the grass-head shop next door? Have an idea? Qin Pingon smiled and said, The gods also earn money, broken silver and copper coins. As long as the money comes in at the main entrance, It's not in the amount and it requires a small flow. Don't ask for a lot of money but a long history. After a moment of silence, Qin Pingon stretched out his hand to hold the child's head. When you grow up, you will understand that this is not reasonable. The little dumb nodded. Although the truth is worthless, the truth that is worthless is also a truth, and if you confiscate your own money you can listen to it, wait and see. Qin Pingon smiled and said, actually it's better if you don't understand some truths. There are many truths in many books and one suffering understands one truth. Only seeing not understanding is lucky. Qin Pingon left Qilong Lane. The white-haired boy was also idle when he was idle, and he was a small follower behind the ancestor of the hidden official. I went to the Yang family pharmacy first. At the moment there is only a young shop assistant guarding the shop. Because of the accident that year, the business of the shop has not been good in these years, but the Yang family has a solid foundation and doesn't care about this at all. Shiling Mountain from the portal of Taoya Lane, although not among the 4 surnames and 10 clans, is considered a good background in a small town. Maybe this young warrior doesn't know yet that he is the close disciple of the old man in the backyard, let alone what his senior brothers are and how they are famous all over the world. The white-haired boy sat by the door, didn't enter the shop, the room smelled of medicine and he had no interest. Qin Pingon stepped over the threshold and asked with a smile, Miss Su isn't there? Xianxia said, senior sister has gone out to travel. Senior sister didn't say where to go but it seemed like a long trip, very far. Maybe next year, maybe the year after, maybe next year, and she never came back, he just waited here. Xianxia asked curiously, Qin Pingon, do you have something to do with senior sister? They are all locals in the small town, and coupled with the relationship between teachers and teachers, Xianxia actually has no special impression of this mountain master Qin. No matter how many identities, there is no copper coin relationship with him. If you look down on people then don't come to the door. Anyway, no one asks anyone. If you come to the door and show off something, I'm not used to you and no one will look at your face. The most important thing is that according to some gossip from the owner of the shop, he did not dare to publicize it. It seems that Qin Pingon received a lot of favor from the pharmacy when he was a child. Qin Pingon smiled and said, it's okay, just ask casually. There were some things in the past and I wanted to chat with Miss Su face to face. Xianxia was vigilant. What do you have to talk about with my senior sister? Qin Pingon couldn't help laughing and joked, Xianxia, no matter how much you guard against thieves, you won't be able to guard against me. Xianxia pouted, this might be a possibility. Zheng Dafeng once said that honest people are not popular, but honest people are especially popular when they have money. The white-haired boy who has been listening with his ears upright is so happy. He has no reason to think of an allusion to Luopu Mountain. It is said that when Li Huai was a child he went to Dasui Xianxia Academy with Qin Pingon to study. An oil bottle wholeheartedly wanted to make Qin Pingon his brother-in-law, but this little fool thought about it and came to the conclusion that my sister is not worthy. Damn, the gang that Millet is in is a talented person. Why can't I get in? The white-haired boy wrapped his arms around his chest and began to earnestly thinking about it. I can only take over the position of the right guardian of Qilong Lane from the boy in Jui? Wouldn't that be worse than a dog? Inside the shop, Qin Pingon asked, can I open the drawer and see a few herbs? Xianxia said angrily, open the door to do business anyway, follow the rules, I have no grudge against you, you can just look at it. Qin Pingon raised his hand habitually, rubbed the waist and ribs of his green shirt, then walked to the medicine cabinet, looked at the label on it and gently opened a drawer. Collecting medicines, dispensing medicines and boiling medicines, Qin Pingon may not be inferior to the experienced apothecary Longzhong in these matters. It is said that one side of the water and soil nurtures the other side, and the same is true for medicinal materials. The same medicinal materials grow on different hills and terrains, and the medicinal properties will vary greatly, so the amount of medicinal materials has to change accordingly. Has become a private industry, so it is not easy to go into the mountains to collect herbs. So many herbs in the pharmacy need to find other channels, such as purchasing from Hongzhou town and various merchants. The more he thought about it, the more angry he became. The white-haired boy suddenly stood up, ran into the house and planned to take a shortcut, bypassing Pei Qian, the chief helmsman, and descending a decree with the ancestor of the hidden official, making himself the deputy chief helmsman. Contentment is always happy, not too small for officials. The white-haired boy lowered his voice and talked to the ancestor of the hidden official, But it was no surprise that the ancestor of the hidden official told her to get out. Qin Pingon opened another drawer and took a sniff. The name of this herb is very interesting, it's called Wang Bu Liuxing. Qin Pingon gently pushed back the drawer, turned his head and suggested with a smile. Sure Lingshan, in the future the shop will enter the mountain to collect herbs, and you can go to Xianxia Mountain, Cinnabar Mountain and Wuxia Peak at will. 50 or 60 kinds of medicinal materials may be better than buying from other places, and you can save some money. Sure Lingshan thought about it and said absent-mindedly, "You can't tell me this, it's not my responsibility to go into the mountains to collect medicine. I'm just the guy who looks at the store, but I can talk to some unreliable guy and say it in advance. That guy is unreliable, talking louder than farting, working less than farting, just listening to thunder and not raining. The shop relies on him and it has not closed yet. All the ancestral graves are smoking." Qin Pingon smiled. The folk customs of the town have always been so simple. When talking he always likes to hold a gun and a stick, and all of them are masters of the arena without a teacher. Sure Lingshan, who was born in Taoya Lane, can at best be regarded as a handyman disciple of this sect. The white-haired boy respected this young man as a man, and dared to speak to the ancestor of his hidden official like this. Even with the passage of time, Falu Street and Taoya Alley on this side of the town, and the locals who stayed in other streets and alleys, have not changed much if they put aside the fairy tales hidden behind the scenes. There will still be people who wear clean long clothes and have read the book and said the words of the master. There will also be people who always have dirt in their nails, calluses on their hands that are yellowed by burning charcoal, and who like to swear at their mothers. Qin Pingon left the shop, crossed the threshold and stood there for a moment. After passing by the crab square, Qin Pingon slowly circled around the archway building, his arms wrapped around his sleeves, and he always looked up. Do your part, hope that it is natural, don't ask outside and fight bulls with anger. The white-haired boy was always standing in the same place, nothing to watch, and the 4 plaques now have no meaning left. Qin Pingon continued to walk. The restaurant next to the street is the tallest building in the town. The real owner is Aunt Feng. The business is still very good. Every time the local people hold a wedding banquet in the county, whether it is a wedding banquet or a celebration banquet, they all like it. Come here for a walk. Some chi practitioners who bought a house here as a dojo also like to come here for a few drinks, but the wine they drink is naturally different from that of ordinary people. An iron-locked well has long been banned by the county government, and a stone fence has been built, and people can no longer come here with buckets to draw water. The old locust tree is gone. Walking along the main street of the county town, we came to the yellow mud house in the easternmost part of the town. Going further outside is the Immortal tomb overgrown with weeds in the past. You can take a detour to the Laosi Mountain in the north, but it was built into a Wunwu temple by the Dali court. Qin Pingon walked to the wooden stake on the side of the road and sat down and said to the white-haired boy, "Don't follow, it's easy to be misunderstood." The white-haired boy deliberately pretended to be stupid, raised his hand high and gestured the height of the 2 sides. "Just the 2 of us, what can we misunderstand? But to be honest, if you can really become the daughter of the ancestor of the hidden official, it would be a very lucky thing, right? Looking at Pei Qian, Chen Wanshu and Xiaomi Mi, you can see how much this guy will be spoiled if he has a daughter in the future. Then you and Ning Yao have a hungry tiger and a sheep and quickly cook the rice. Cowardly, you deserve to be a bachelor." Qin Pingon was too lazy to have the same knowledge as her. Sitting on the stake, turned his head to look at the road that had been spreading into the distance. The Great Wall of Sword Qi Jianxiu is like a cloud. It is not surprising that Qi practitioners other than sword practitioners should not practice in the Great Wall of Sword Qi. The sword Qi over there is too heavy and it fills the world with great power. For Qi practitioners it's a torment. But there was one thing that Qin Pingon was always puzzled by, and the more he thought about it, the more mysterious he felt. That is the limitless warriors in the history of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and the number is too small. Can even be said that it is to the point of outrageous. Mami Bai, she used to be the great master of the end, but she was injured on the battlefield and fell to the top of the mountain. According to the archives of the Summer Palace and going back further, the Great Wall of Sword Qi had only one terrifying martial artist for a very long period of time, and he was also a female master. It's like the martial arts of the Great Wall of Sword Qi are only for female warriors and open the door? Qin Pingon lightly tapped his knees with his fingers and frowned. On the other side of the Golden Long Bridge she once broke the secret in one sentence. Guxing Qiming, also known as Chonggang, is actually where the strange mountain is located. Pure martial arts, the flesh becomes a god. It is a pity that the old soldier of the military family could not really walk through this avenue. The three official positions of the Great Wall of Sword Qi are Criminal Officer, Hidden Officer, and Sacrificial Officer. According to the original intention of setting up the three officials in the first place, the criminal officials are in charge of killing, the hidden officials are in charge of strategies, and the sacrificial officials are in charge of sacrifice. As for the former sacrificial official, according to the records of the top-secret archives of the Summer Palace, the archives of the sacrificial officials of the past dynasties are extremely detailed, and only a few words are recorded: sword repair, jade pure realm, few military exploits. It can be said that they are not outstanding. I remember Ning Yao said that when she came to the town for the first time, she was in the Yang family shop and heard that old man Yang took the initiative to mention that there was a passing sword fairy who left a landscape travel journal. According to the old man, he often read this travel journal, so he knew something about the outside world. Ning Yao from the Great Wall of Sword Qi mentioned a sword cultivator, but the old man used the title of Sword Immortal. Qin Pingon didn't pay much attention to this detail before, but now Qin Pingon can't help but think about it. Therefore, Qin Pingon suspects that the archives of the Summer Palace regarding the appointment of the sacrificial officials are deliberately false. Qin Pingon naturally thought of Yu Lu. Standing up, Qin Pingon didn't go to the Immortal tomb, but turned back the same way, crossed the street and alley, then left the town and walked towards the stone arch bridge. The white-haired boy still followed behind, swaggering, and after walking on the stone bridge, she pointed to a piece of emerald green on the river bank. The water plants were like pen tubes. Section by section, she asked curiously what it was. Qin Pingon glanced at it and said that it was fenugreek. The fried meat was very fragrant and delicious, but it was a seasonal wild vegetable not always available. In the spring breeze, everything is flourishing and it seems that there is everything. In winter it seems that there is nothing. It is not easy to dig winter bamboo shoots, especially when the mountains are covered with heavy snow. Qin Pingon said with a smile that when Lotiao was seen in poetry, it might have been the first handwriting of Suzy. With just a few words, Suzy could write the most moving beauty of seasonal scenery. The white-haired boy asked the old cook if he would cook this dish. Qin Pingon said I would. The white-haired boy just snorted, but he didn't even want to pick wild vegetables. Standing on the bridge, Qin Pingon raised his eyes and looked into the distance, and suddenly found that there seemed to be more ducks in the river. By the way, Lu Xianyang and the round-faced girl were not at the blacksmith shop. No wonder, no wonder. The white-haired boy walked across the bridge, sat down on the steps and said, Ancestor Yingguan, I'll be waiting here. Because she knows what Qin Pingon is going to do. Many things can be done without taboos, but there are some things that shouldn't be joking. Qin Pingon turned his head and said with a smile, just follow along, there is nothing to be particular about or taboo. Go to the grave to offer incense and add soil. On this trip to Tongyi's Hao I went to many mountains again. On the way back to Luopao Mountain, I disembarked at Lialongking and walked a landscape distance with Senior Song. After saying goodbye, Qin Pingon quietly followed the old man again, until the old man walked towards at a city gate. He suddenly raised his arm and waved his hand, and Qin Pingon, who followed silently, left with a smile. After that I passed by and stopped at some green hills, some of which were still covered with snow. Qin Pingon revered the incense and added the soil, took out a pot of wine and squatted down on the grave. The white-haired boy squatted and watched from a distance. Qin Pingon turned his head and looked at the tomb behind him, facing a distant mountain with twin peaks like a pen stand. For a while Qin Pingon noticed this for the first time. He used to be young and ignorant, so how did he know these ways? Later he left his hometown many times and learned a little about Wuxia and Kanyu, but every time he went to the grave, Qin Pingon never glanced at the distant green hills. Qin Pingon simply sat beside the tomb and looked at the mountain silently. It can be seen from this that after the parents left, it was important to choose the tomb here. It may be that the old people who knew these things in the small town helped to choose. In my hometown and town year after year there are fewer elderly people and the taste of the year is weak. I heard that Pei Qian and Xiaomi Mili have said that the night meal is no longer lively. One year Qin Pingon was not at home and Pei Qian, who was still a small black charcoal, kept a vigil at the ancestral house in Nipping Lane, and opened the door early in the morning to set off firecrackers. If it wasn't for Qin Pingon's warning, it is estimated that Pei Qian, who already had a few dollars in his pocket, could have bought the entire shop's firecrackers. Millet grain once had a riddle which was really thought up by the little girl in black, not taught to her by Qin Pingon. Once the millet asked what runs the fastest and what runs the slowest, but they can't catch up. Qin Pingon gave a lot of answers and the millet grain said that it was wrong. It really stumped Qin Pingon, who had a bright mind. He made the little girl happy and she was too happy. Yesterday and tomorrow. Seems like this, all yesterdays are irreversible and all tomorrows are tomorrow. The white-haired boy never bothered him. The mountains are warm and the water is soft. The willows are the grass is growing and the warblers are flying and the spring flowers are blooming. Sort of coming. Chapter 983. They walked back together, walked towards the stone arch bridge, walked up the steps. Qin Pingon walked to the center of the arch bridge, stopped suddenly, sat down and hung his legs outside the bridge. The white-haired boy just sat by the side. Qin Pingon turned his head to look at Luopao Mountain, as if the millet grain had just patrolled the mountain and arrived at the Jiasfeng Patriarch's Hall, and was not walking fast. Luopao Mountain's right guardian's diligent mountain patrol morning and evening, is notoriously unstoppable and he never sleeps in bed for a day. Just like Zhou Yiboi's monthly schedule, he believes that it is far worse than Zhou's daily patrol of the mountains. On the way of the mountain tour there was no one around and Xiaomi began to practice a set of martial arts skills. It was the crazy sword technique taught by Pei Qian, but Pei Qian was a one-handed sword and she was different. She used a walking stick with one hand, a golden pole in one hand and a sword in both hands. The power is doubled. Don't be envious, you can't be envious because this is called self-taught. Go to the stream again, pick up the rocks and find the crabs to guess the boxing. What does it mean? You always win or lose, there is no suspense. This kind of behavior is indeed a bit naive and outrageous. Next time don't bully those defeated men. Grab a fish. The mountain patrol envoy will first release the cloth and then gently press the abdomen. The fish will open its mouth and it will be a fist. Alas, it is a sure victory. When the good man mountain master was not at home, millet grains patrolled the mountain, walking fast, always running around. The good mountain master is at home and the patrolling walks slowly, leisurely, without any hurry, and the time spent on the mountain road must be at least doubled. It seems that as long as she runs fast, the good mountain master can go home sooner. So the same can be said, as long as she walks slowly, the good mountain master can travel down the mountain slowly. Qin Pingon smiled and retracted his gaze, lifted his feet and took off his cloth shoes, sat cross-legged, brushed off a little dirt from the soles of the shoes, and then lightly tapped the cloth surface of the cloth shoes a few times and asked, "That boxing book?" The white-haired boy seemed to have a good relationship with the ancestor of the hidden official, and his face was indifferent, and he said, "As long as the lard is not deceived, it will be handed over to the Xianxia bookstore for printing and engraving, and you can sell it to make money." Qin Pingon smiled and said, speaking seriously, "The reason why the Jinyu genealogy ultimatum on the mountain is prefixed with the word Jinyu has always had two meanings. And that boxing manual, like the precious Taoist book secretly passed down by the sect, the paper of ordinary material cannot bear the strong Taoist meaning. The boxing manual, maybe Qin Pingon needs to set up a lot of landscape restrictions. If you use an analogy, this boxing manual is like a mountain and there is Dao Qi in the mountain. It needs to protect the mountain to stabilize the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, so that the boxing in the book will not spill out accidentally." The white-haired boy said, "In addition to the observation and practice of the hidden official ancestor, the two descendants from Luopao Mountain and Xindu Mountain in the future don't care if they are the ancestors such as Pei Qian, Zhao Xiao, etc. or Zhou Junqian. Wait, it's still going to spread in the future. The third disciples plus 4, 5, 6, 7, as long as they are the direct lineages who have the status of the genealogy, they can read this boxing manual, but they can't be passed on outside and they can't go out and teach boxing." Qin Pingon nodded and said, "Just think, I owe you a favor." At first glance it was not Wu Shuangjiang's advice. Palace Master Wu had no share of such leisurely pleasures. Of course, it could also be that Wu Shuangjiang did it on purpose, to make Qin Pingon owe her, rather than Luo Pashan owes him and Sui Qugong a favor. The former is optional and the latter is completely unnecessary. The white-haired boy's eyes rolled sharply and he asked tentatively, "Ancestor hidden official, I have a very far-sighted suggestion. I don't know if I should say it or not. If it was left in the past, the conversation could end here, but after all, taking someone else's hand short," Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Tell me about it." The white-haired boy was in high spirits and said, "As a child of the outer sect, I am also a member of Luopao Mountain. I should do my best, so I thought of doing my best, working hard day and night, to the ancestors of the hidden officials in Luopao Mountain. Many bigwigs in the Sifeng Patriarchate have compiled a chronology with detailed textual research, beautiful words and splendid expressions. Both the Shan men and the Xianxia sects have the habit of compiling chronological records. The former mostly records the life stories of the family sages by later generations, revolving around the master of the pedigree, with the year and month as the main line of latitude and longitude. According to the rules, the top sects can record the resumes of all the monks in the upper 5 realms. The general sect and the larger immortal houses only record the Jindan cultivators. There are certain thresholds. Of course, Luopa Mountain could have done this for a long time. The reason why he has not started writing is probably because the mountain owner himself did not mention it. The writer is a bit like the historian and living man of the Yamashita dynasty, who is often a cultivator who is in charge of the discipline in a sect. Qin Pingon didn't speak. He lowered his head and started to pull out his sleeves. Return the boxing records first and then settle the account with you. Earlier on the wooden bench in Qilong Lane, we had an old account to settle. The white-haired boy hurriedly grabbed the arm of the ancestor of the hidden official with both hands. Don't be like this, don't be like this, don't worry about compiling the chronology. The ancestor of the hidden official doesn't need to be so anxious to send me a blank booklet. Just as Qin Pingon was about to get up, the white-haired boy picked up a cloth shoe neatly placed between the two sides by the ancestor of the hidden official, and took a closer look. Good craftsmanship, I can see it, very careful. Qin Pingon took back the shoes and put them back in place as if he had changed his mind and said, compiling a chronology is not a trivial matter on the mountain. Next time I will discuss matters at Jiasfeng Patriarchal Hall, and put this matter on the agenda. If no one raises objections, it's up to you to edit it. The white-haired boy began to take an inch and asked tentatively, can I sign the name of the Luopao Mountain Chronicle? Qin Pingon began to draw his sleeves again. The white-haired boy slapped the stone bridge and said solemnly, that's it, don't leave your name for good deeds. Qin Pingon shook his sleeves and said, it's fine for you to compile the Shanmen chronology. I only have 2 requirements. One is that the words should be simple, the deeds should be realistic, and the deeds should not be fancy. Taboo. The second requirement is to start compiling the chronology as a preface since I was 14, and you don't have to write anything before that, and there's nothing to write about. The white-haired boy chick-pecks the rice, rubs his hands together and plans to make a big splash. With this credit, isn't it easy to be a helmsman? Qin Pingon was silent for a moment, then smiled. If you don't mention this, I will actually take the initiative to remind you, you can sign the chronology. The white-haired boy was annoyed and scratched his head with both hands. It's me who's superfluous, underestimating the mind of the ancestor of the hidden official. Blame me and can't blame the small belly of the ancestor of the hidden official. Qin Pingon reminded, if you are like a bird, you really don't want to sign. The white-haired boy immediately restrained his expression, straightened his waist, turned his head to look at the mountain in the west and asked curiously, is that Pearl Mountain just bought with a single gold and copper coin? Qin Pingon nodded and said, it's because of your high realm that you can see the mystery. At the earliest, who would be willing to spend this unjust money to buy a small mountain bag with nothing? The white-haired boy asked, did the ancestor of the hidden official secretly get the advice of an expert? Qin Pingon shook his head and said, I just thought that a Luobao Mountain and a Pearl Mountain sounded similar. Furthermore, Jinju Mountain is the closest to the town, and is the easiest to see from the town, and if you want to enter the mountain, Jinju Mountain is the only place you must pass. Silently tell the whole town that Qin Pingon in Mud Bottle Alley is now rich. Whether you are happy or not, whether you care or not, you have to admit the fact that it is a sure thing. This statement is a digression, don't write it in the chronology. Rarely did the white-haired boy not have a hippie smile, he just nodded and agreed. There may be no real common sorrow and joy in life, it is probably like 2 people, 2 worlds. Everyone has their own thoughts, you love me and I want, one is going to go down and another is going to be long, and there is no arrangement for teaching the world. The white-haired boy has been in Qilong Lane for a long time. He is still very clear about the general family history of Qin Pingon and Luopao Mountain. Qin Lingjun often goes to drink and fight with Jiasheng. A boy in Tsingyi, he always shouts that he is a hero and does not mention the year. Yong, an old Taoist priest who is very good at flattering in kung fu, complains that there are no outsiders at the wine table. You and I, brothers, were full of pride in the past. It was bitter and difficult and it was impossible to communicate with outsiders. Dish appetizers? So the white-haired boy sat on the threshold, nibbling on melon seeds, listening to those two treasures showing off and touting each other, and occasionally he would hug his head and cry when he drank too much. Under the table after crying find a drink. Luopao Mountain and Jinju Mountain together with Baolu Mountain, Cayenne Peak and Xianxia Mountain, which were first leased to Longquan Jianzong for 300 years, are the 5 mountains that Qin Pingan bought for the first time. Seems that year Qin Pingan was 14 years old. After that I bought Huimeng Mountain adjacent to the north of Luopao Mountain, Nujiao Mountain that Beipingzi Baozhai voluntarily evacuated, Cinnabar Mountain that Zus family in Qingfeng City voluntarily gave up, and Clawfish Back and Weixia Peak as well as the mountains located in the mountains. The westernmost is the Worshipping Sword platform. In addition, through Qin Lingjun's matchmaking he bought another Huanghu Mountain. This is the second expansion site of Luopao Mountain, which has 11 vassal hilltops. After that, the Zayadu Gang in the inner hill is the third recruitment. The white-haired boy asked cautiously, Ancestor Hidden Official, what are the 3 hills within Baolu Mountain? What do you say now? Not long ago Longquan Sword Sect suddenly changed its suzerain and became Lu Xianyang. As a result, even Zhou Xian moved away but the 3 hills remained unchanged. Qin Pingan said, I used 27 grain rain money, which is equivalent to renting back 3 hilltops for 270 years with Longquan Sword Sect. The white-haired boy rolled his eyes, thinking that this didn't take off her pants and fart, and that Wan Qiong had a big brain. No wonder that Qin Lingjun often boasted about how he and Wan Xingren became friends at first sight. Inch Umbrella Qin Pingan stood up and said, Go back to the shop at Riding Dragon Lane. I will take a shortcut along the Longshu River to Luopao Mountain. After that, Qin Pingan went up the Longshu River and passed by the stone cliff that the locals called the back of a green ox. After that he took a detour and passed Jinju Mountain which had never been built and then walked into the mountain to the west. Qin Pingan didn't go straight back to Luopao Mountain. He was going to take a trip to Yidai Peak first. It's better to go down the mountain to visit Juchai Island on the back of the Clawfish, the shop left by the dragon boat Fanmo and Nujiada Baozhai. These over the years, it was actually Lu Chongran and Juchai Island genealogy sister who helped take care of it. Strange to say, Qin Pingan has given so much Guyu money to those staggering amounts of money from the gods, such as the congratulations received by Qingping Jianzong. Liu's family in the snowy continent has given so much Guyu money, but Qin Pingan can't say that he is not surprised, but always it's not too much concern. But for any long-lasting income no matter how little, Qin Pingan always pays extra attention. However, Qin Pingan never mentioned this idea to anyone. Anyway, it was probably a piece of flattery. But if Lu Xianyang listened to it he would definitely have to laugh, scold and ridicule a few words. You were afraid of poverty when you were a child. In the earliest days of Beipingzu, when talking about the history of Qin Pingan's fortune in Ni Pingxiang, he could not circumvent Beiyue Piyun Mountain and Longquan Jianzong. To be precise, he could not circumvent Weibo and Wan Qiong. Including Beiyue Piyun Mountain in the west of the town, there used to be a total of 62 hills, and naturally all the famous flowers have their own owners. The reason why it was once was because Wan Qiong, the last military sage who sat in Lizidongshan, stepped down as the suzerain and let his disciple Lu Xianyang take over. Then Longquan Jianzong relocated Xianxia Mountain where the Zushi Hall was located, and all its own hilltops, including Dangdang Mountain and Henglang Peak, to the land of Jiangyi, where the old Beiyue Mountain was located in the north, but left the 3 houses that were originally leased with Luopao Mountain. In the eyes of outsiders, the guess may be the meaning of Dali Song, who does not want the 2 sects to be too close to each other, to prevent the tendency that one mountain cannot tolerate 2 tigers, or that there is indeed some kind of unknown to outsiders between the 2 mountains. After all, if the news is not bad, Qin Pingan, a rising star from Lizidongshan, once worked as a part-time worker in a sword-casting shop on the Longshu River, but he never participated in the sect celebration of Longquan Jianzong. Even his good friend Lu Xianyang, who succeeded him as the sect master, never showed up. On Luopa Mountain the first mountain gate was established and Longquan Jianzong was not invited. Later it jumped to the head of the sect and Wan Qiong was not invited. It is said that only Lu Xianyang showed up at that time. Color Peak. Qin Pingan came to the foot of a mountain. There was no mountain gate to show his identity. There were not many monks in Yidai Peak Mountain. There was no mountain gate, and there was no concierge monk who was responsible for hospitality and communication. He only erected a small stone tablet at the foot of the mountain. After 8 words there is nothing to stop and they practice their own practice. It is mainly used to remind Qi practitioners, don't come here to hang out when you have nothing to do, and you will not be entertained. However, local people such as woodcutters chopping wood and collecting herbs are not at all concerned. And Yidai Peak has become one of the few hills in the western mountains, where the people of the town can still be seen. This Yidai Peak, with towering ancient trees in the mountains, is like a pines turning into dragons and green cypresses turning into luans. It is indeed a very quiet feng shui treasure. In fact, Qin Pingon was attracted to this mountain back then because there are many kinds of herbal medicines in the mountain, and the soil is suitable for making porcelain, but at that time there were only so much gold and copper coins, and the price of buying the mountain was a lot more expensive than that of Xianxia Mountain. Between the Clothes Belt Peak and the purchase of Xianxia and Kaiyunfeng at the same time, Qin Pingon chose the latter. The owner of the mountain, Lu Hongwen, an old cultivator of Jindan, comes from the Huangliang school. According to his seniority, the old man is the senior uncle of the current head. It was Lu Hongwen at the beginning who insisted on buying the Yidai Peak with the remaining bag of gold and copper coins, saying that he wanted to practice cleanly here so as not to stay in the Huangliang sect and be annoying. The granddaughter of the old man, Lu Runyan, raised a young white fox. She was once pushed by some people to hold Jingguoshuiyu. There were only a few spectators, but it seemed that she really earned a fairy money. Lu Hongwen once took a group of direct disciples including Song Yuan, to visit the young mountain master in Luopao Mountain, but it was many years ago. At that time Luopao Mountain had not yet entered the sect. Lu Hongwen and the big housekeeper Zhou Xian also often makes an appointment for a drink, invites the other party to Yidai, helps with the cooking and cooks a few dishes with wine. Often one afternoon the time will pass leisurely in small talk, and then wait until Luopao Mountain becomes a well-known scenic spot in the world. In this place the old cultivator deliberately distanced himself from Luopao Mountain, and he didn't even have a drink with Zhou Lian. The young mountain owner is often not at home, and travels abroad all year round without seeing each other at all. However, during festivals the girl in pink dress named Qin Wanshu, the little housekeeper on the unfortunate mountain, would still suggest to come to Yidai Peak and bring some special cakes from Qilong Lane, tea leaves fried by Zhou Lian, etc. Qin Wanshu's gift. At first there was a little black charcoal girl next to Qin Wanshu, and later there was a little girl in black with a walking stick and a golden pole on her shoulders, and later the child named Pei Qian. I stopped following. I heard that it seemed that I was going to practice boxing. Later Xiaomi Meili stopped climbing. It seemed that there was a turmoil in Hongzhou town. A Huangliang sect originally belonged to the second-rate bottom Immortal mansion in Beipingzhu. Now the patriarch Lu Hongwen, the head of the High Pillow, and the ancestor who just held the opening ceremony, the Huangliang sect has 3 golden pills at the same time. Earth Immortal, especially Gao Zhen, is also a sword cultivator. As a result, the Huangliang faction has firmly ranked in the forefront of the second-rate Immortal mansion in Aquarius. Only one nascent soul cultivator is missing. As for the Jade Pure Realm, it is still something that I dare not expect. Master Lao Xian held a box of boxwood Ganoderma lucidum in his hand, greeted him with a smile, pinched a mountain gate finger with one hand and treated each other with courtesy. Lu Hongwen of Huangliang School, I have met Master Qin Shan. Qin Pingon returned the salute. The younger generation has seen Master Lu Lao Xian. Lu Hongwen smiled and said, I don't dare to be. The seniority on the mountain is not determined by age. The master of Qin Shan can be called a fellow Daoist. Previously, when Qin Lingjun and Guizhujiu participated in the opening ceremony, Gao Zhen was actually worried. He was worried about whether Lu Shibo was on Yidai Peak and whether he had ever said that he and Huangliang sect were not with Luopa Mountain. After all, with Lu Shibo's temper, Gao Zhen felt that he could say any ugly words, but he didn't know that on Yidai Feng's side, even if Lu Hongwen declared his identity, he would not say Yidai Feng, but only said Huangliang faction. Qin Pingon took the initiative to apologize. For so many years I have rarely come to Yidai Peak to visit Master Lu Xianxia. Lu Hongwen smiled casually. It's nothing. Qin Shanju doesn't have to worry about this kind of thing just because it's too close. It seems like a few steps away, but he doesn't feel that he has to meet in a hurry, dragging it along. It's a lot of regrets down the mountain. It's okay to be on the mountain. If you meet often, it's easy to finish the conversation. If you meet again, you can only say embarrassing words that the weather is good today, but it's not beautiful. Qin Shanju doesn't have to do anything deliberately in the future. When I'm free I'm interested I'll come to Yidefeng for a stroll. The old man spoke sincerely and casually. Obviously this old Jindan cultivator did not take Qin Pingan's new identities too seriously. The friendship between gentlemen was as shallow as water, and he only felt that after a few hundred years in this mountain in the west, the Xianxia sect who bought the top of the mountain through gold and copper coins, aside from the female cultivator of Zhuchai Island on the side of the clawfish back, I am afraid that apart from Wanqiong's Longquan Jianzong, it belongs to the relationship between Yidai Peak and Luopao Mountain. Nowadays Master Lu has a saying on the entire Beipingzi mountain that, it's good to cook with a cold stove, which is not a good reputation. In short, he is very envious of Lu Hongwen and Yidefeng. The residence of the old monk, there is open space in front of the house, surrounded by a small river, the water is clear and slightly sweet and tea can be made. Bamboo fences are set up around the house, and more than 100 plants of various colors are planted. When the vines on the stone are blooming like a bucket, there are ancient relics in the mountains for more than 100 years. Among them there is a light yellow peony in the corner, one with 3 stems extremely tall and lush. The branches and leaves are separated from the drape, and the staggered eaves can cover the scorching sun. In Qin Pingan's eyes, Immortal Master Lu from Yidai Peak is a pure Daoist. The realm of cultivation may not be too high, but the pure practice is consistent and there is no right or wrong in the eyes, that is, a person who cultivates the Tao freely. Because of the opening ceremony, Lu Runyan, the granddaughter of the old Immortal Master, and Song Yuan, his proud disciple, have not returned to the mountain for the time being. Lu Hongwen took out a pot of wine brewed in the mountains, and 2 celadone wine glasses from Longquan County. Master Zhou Xian helped fill Qin Pingan's cup with water first and smiled, we all drink and drink by ourselves. If we think we've reached the door we don't need to drink hard. It seems that the old man has learned a lot of local dialects in the small town from Zhou Xian. Qin Pingan nodded with a smile, holding the cup in both hands. This is the first cup of wine. I have to make up for the courtesy that I have accumulated over the years, and honor the old Immortal Master with a cup. Lu Hongwen had to hold the cups with both hands and the 2 wine glasses collided lightly. The toasting people's cups were slightly low. I took a break and personally participated in the opening ceremony of the Huangliang sect, which gave me a lot of face. Not long ago the head of Bugao replied to a letter saying that he would bring a few patriarchs in the late spring at the latest this year. Enshrined, come to Yidai Peak to meet my uncle as a teacher. Anyway, knowing the bottom line, the old cultivator doesn't need to deliberately pretend on Qin Pingan's side that the teacher's family is harmonious and the relationship is harmonious. Qin Pingan smiled and said, Sect Master Gao is in charge of a huge sect, and those who take the top spot in the Zushi Hall in addition to taking care of their own cultivation, need to weigh all aspects and the inside and outside. It's not easy to think about, there are many things. He can't help but do what he thinks. Lu Hongwen said, it seems that Lord Qin has a good impression of the high pillow. Qin Pingan joked, it's easy to sympathize with people who need to ask for help often. Lu Hongwen seems to have solved the knot in his heart. Now when he mentions Gaozhen, the nephew who once hated him, in fact the old man has no anger in his heart, so when he heard the words he nodded and smiled. It's true that Gaozhen is the head of the sect. He is the most suitable candidate. In this matter I have never doubted the decision of my junior and senior brothers. If someone else were to be the leader I would not have come to Yidefeng. No matter how annoying it is, I'll stay there and spray shit. Qin Pingan smiled and said, if one day you don't even bother to scold, you will be really disappointed. Lu Hongwen nodded and said, it's just such a rude man. When this guy came back to the mountain he had to teach a teacher and nephew this truth. After that they all drank each other. After drinking a pot of wine it was almost half the amount. As a result, the old man who did not persuade the drinking went to the house and brought a pot of wine over. This is probably the real persuasion. Master Zhou Xian took out a brocade box from his sleeve and put it on the table. After opening it, it was a white jade poem and essay string strung with vermilion silk threads with a bead on it. The old man gently pushed the brocade box to Qin Pingan, smiled and said, you can't just drink and forget the business. This is a gift from me to congratulate Luopa Mountain for joining the sect. To be honest, I have been reluctant to give it to Luopa Mountain. It's not how precious the gift itself is, and it's not worth a few gods' money. It's because I like it very much. The words in this circle of poetry, prose and jade are very good, and the words are even better. Accept it, hurry up, don't say some nonsense that a gentleman doesn't like, and be polite to me. Good guy. Before the old immortal master could continue to speak, the young mountain master had already thanked him, and it was safe to do so. Afterwards, the young Zhou Xian actually started to ask about Xiu's actions, and the old Jin Dan took advantage of Zhu Jin to answer what was in his heart. Dare to ask the seniors, what is cultivation? Walk on your own, take care of yourself. What is righteousness? Everyone is doing well. What do you mean by saying this? It's not a mystical thing, it's just a common saying. It's nothing more than a way to go out and a bridge to cross the water. You come and I come and go and no one can stop you. Senior must have read a lot of classics of the three religions. Not much. That is, the predecessors have the demeanor of ancient sages. WBU. Novel. Come, understand, not general. It's not an exaggeration. Lord Xianxia, you are not bad. You don't have any comprehension in reading. How can you have today's good fortune? Others say that you are blessed with deep fate, but I say you are cherishing fortune. Not as many as seniors. You and I are at most different, so there is no need to be too modest. I have a lot of books here and I will borrow them casually in the future. Finally, Master Lu brought another pot of wine. In the end, Qin Pingon got a little drunk and walked down the belt peak with a flushed face. Closed households and reading books for many years, all kinds of pine are old as dragon scales, flickering off the paper and disappearing. When Qin Pingon walked to the back of the clawfish, he washed his face with water from the stream at the foot of the mountain. Back then, Lu Chongrun signed a landscape contract with Luopao Mountain and brought 12 direct disciples from Shujian Lake. She spent 30 grain rain money and rented clawbacks from Luopao Mountain for 300 years. This is of course the result of Lu Chongrun crying poor. He doesn't haggle when he does business. Is he still a woman? After that, she paid for it herself and hired Mahist craftsman and mechanic to build a series of continuous mansions, which were tightly clustered like fish scales, so that the clawfish had their backs. Due to the continuous buildings in the mountains and the special materials, whenever sunlight or it is the moonlight that sprinkles, and the roofs of the buildings in the mountains are shining, one golden is brilliant, one silver is white as snow, and it is beautiful. As a result, today's clawback has inadvertently become a small famous scenic spot. In fact, there were only a few cultivators on Zhuchai Island at that time, and many houses were vacant. Lu Chongrun didn't care. All the sects have made a lot of fairy money in this kind of thing. Many Aquarius sects and genealogy cultivators are willing to give a very expensive rent. On a certain hilltop in the west of this mountain, they nominally own a house. One's own children or friends on the mountain travel, there is a place to stay, and it is a good thing to be able to live in the mountain. At that time, Qin Pingon was not in his hometown. Xing Dafeng was still a janitor. He never went to the colorful world. He complained to Lu Chongrun face to face. People, what kind of business? These buildings on the mountain are more than 30 grain rain money. You can cheat me of money, but you can't hurt my heart. If one is not careful, the world loses a good man who is honest and responsible, and there is one more romantic man who is wandering and blooming who will be responsible. Sister Chongrun, if you are willing to take responsibility, let's settle this marriage first. I'll pack up and go to the clawfish to carry it. In fact, just the handwriting of the chief of Luopao Mountain to enshrine Zhou Fei is far more than 30 grain rain money. In the early years, Chief Zhou was wealthy and generous. He paid out of his own pocket and took out 4 mountain magic weapons of good rank in one breath. As the overwhelming things of Huimen Mountain, Cinnabar Mountain, Weixiao Peak and Clawfish Back, these treasures landed. Rooting is closely connected with the water transportation of the mountain roots. When Lu Chongrun salvaged the water temple of the relics of the motherland, it complemented the former, making the water transportation of the clawfish's back more and more intense. Lu Chongrun planned to sign a new lease with Luopeishan earlier, and Zhuchai Island wanted to renew the contract on the basis of 300 years. 600 years. Because according to the agreement of the first contract, after the expiration of 300 years, the monks on Zhuchai Island moved to Lishan, but they could not take away those buildings, nor could they demolish the timber of the immortal homes that served as the pillars, and they could not relocate the immortal homes in the mountains. Flowers, plants, and trees will all be automatically converted into industries under the name of Luopao Mountain. There is no way. This contract was signed by Zhu Lian, and it was written clearly in black and white. The female cultivator of Zhuchai Island complained a lot about this at the time. If the accountant from Xianxia Island had come to negotiate business with the island owner in person, How could he be so mean and pay attention to each other? Absolutely impossible. Chuzhou's clawfish back, if coupled with the Zhuchai Island in Shujian Lake, is similar to the Huangliang school, and it can be regarded as going up and down the mountain. As a reward for helping to salvage the ruins under the eyes of the Dali dynasty, Lu Chongrun sent a dragon boat to Luopao Mountain, in addition to a verbal promise that the two parties would split the account between 5 and 5. As a treasure trove of the old country, in addition to the two immortal treasures of the water palace and the dragon boat, there are actually many treasures. Lu Chongrun's income, according to Zhou Lian's estimate at the time, had 500 or 600 grain rain money. It's just that Zhou Lian deliberately turned a blind eye to this, and Lu Chongrun was happy to push the boat along, pretending that it wasn't the case. Later, Lu Chongrun was willing to take the initiative to serve as the steward of the ink-turning dragon boat, largely because of this matter. Among them, the Chongbao Water Temple, which was refined by the Immortals, is now placed near the Baozhu Pavilion in the Zhu Shirtang by Lu Chongrun. Today, the young mountain owner of Luopao Mountain takes the initiative to be a guest of Clawfish Back, which seems to be a rare thing for the first time, mainly because Qin Pingon is away all year round. The happiest ones are definitely not Lu Chongrun, who has been struggling with how to renew his contract, but those young female nuns who have long been familiar with Mr. Xianxia Island's accountant. A few years ago, Luopao Mountain took the initiative to show his favor, and asked Lu Chongrun, who was on his back, to select a few direct disciples with calm personality and outstanding aptitude, and went to the Lotus Root Blessed Land to devote himself to cultivation. For a period of 10 years, in the two feng shui treasures, the water transport is exaggerated to the point of exaggeration. It is extremely suitable for qi practitioners who practice water techniques. It is simply the best dojo tailored for their Zhuchai Island monks. They are naturally great. The origins are all from Beiju Luzhou. One is a part of the Nanshuan water temple presented by Shen Lin, the Duke of Jidu Lingyuan, and a stream presented by Li Yuan, the Marquis of Longting. Over the years, since Lu Chongrun has already become a golden pill, it is very difficult to make further progress. Therefore, he has traveled twice and recruited a new batch of disciples. The small sects do not have high requirements for the qualifications of cultivating embryos, and it is not a small mistake to accept disciples who have the cultivating qualifications who hope to enter the middle 5 realms. In addition, among some of Lu Chongrun's direct disciples, many orphan girls from the mountains were hired as maids. They were called maids in name. In fact, they came to Clarets to practice as long as they could. They had the opportunity to join the genealogy. If you have a family and relatives outside the mountain, you can get dozens of taels of silver every month, which is a good thing you can't even imagine. The female cultivator and the maids of the various mansions numbered nearly 100 people. As a result, Yingyan Jianyan and Clawback became more and more lively. Those born in hardship may not necessarily be treated kindly after their fortunes and may even worsen. It's just that Lu Chongrun is well disciplined, and he doesn't have high requirements for the cultivating qualifications of his disciples. On the contrary, he cares very much about his Xinxing. Therefore, the clawfish is back here and he doesn't dare to deceive anything. The style of the door is very good. Qin Pingon was walking on the mountain road, and the concierge female cultivator had notified the ancestors of the temple. Seeing the figure in green shirt, one shouted one after another, and 3 female cultivators came one after another and said in unison, "Mr. Qin." They are still used to calling each other Mr. Qin. Qin Pingon smiled and nodded, remembering their names clearly. Liu Xiaoguan Qing Bai Ke, how are you? Of course, it's just because of Qin Ping's good memory. The accountant of Xianxia Island is notoriously incomprehensible. What's more, when he was in Shujian Lake, because of the relationship of the pilgrim man who was born as a ghost cultivator, Qin Pingon, who was a lobbyist, ate a lot of closed doors at the ferry of Zhuchai Island. In fact, this matter is very much talked about among the women in Zhuchai Island. Oh, it is true that our Zhuchai Island is a small sect, but our mountain gate is very big. How can I ask which mountain in the world can stop Mr. Qin from climbing the mountain again and again? Is that Jingyang Mountain? Or the gods? Certainly not, or dare not. However, Lu Chongrun is under strict control, and no one dares to spread the word, because once discovered, the island owner will directly remove the genealogy and drive him down the mountain with no room for him. Qin Pingon chatted with the 3 female nuns for a few words, then said goodbye and left. In those days, every time I had a closed door on Zhuchai Island and went to Zhu Xian Mansion on Xianxia Island, Qin Pingon might have to be poked into his heart by that Ma Yuanji. I have suffered from the loss of being unsightly. Qin Pingon, you will often come to my house in the future. When I see you, you are uglier than me. I swear your friend's wife can't be bullied. You kid is ugly and others are making fun of it. Don't have any crooked thoughts. Why don't you come with me? Even if Her Royal Highness has not been married by me, it is still your future sister-in-law. When you see her, remember to show me a pair of eyes. Don't glance at me. Everyone is a man with a handle in the crotch. I still don't understand you. Qin Pingon, tell me your heart. Do you have any ideas when you see Her Royal Highness the Princess? Oh, really not. Well, I believe you once. I actually saw the stunner among the stunners, like the eldest princess, and I didn't even think about it. Bah, it's not a man, it's really not a thing. When Mr. Qin was far away, Bai Ke laughed and stretched out his hand. If you are willing to admit defeat, hurry up and pay for your money. Lu Xia was the second disciple of Lu Chongrun, and Bai Ke was the younger disciple. Back then, a few of them took Qin Pingon as a bet, but Lu Xia lost 10 snows to spend money. Bai Ke was still the normal girl in the past, and she was the only one back then. Earn money because she was the only one who bet that Qin Pingon could climb the mountain, and the result was a total kill. Qin Pingon stopped and turned his head. They immediately stopped laughing. After all, today is different from the past. Mr. Qin has more identities and each one is more scary than the other. The mountain master of Luopao Mountain, the close disciple of Wenxing, the younger brother of Cui Yu, the young master of the embroidered tiger, the Taoist companion of Ning Yao, the number one person in the colorful world, the martial artist of the limit with Chao Tsiwen Quan, the 40-year-old jade pure realm sword immortal. What they were able to do in the past, now doing it, especially in person, is a bit out of place, and in the end they were caught. Qin Pingon stood on the spot, smiled and joked. Guanqing, listen to my advice. First, don't gamble with senior sister Bai Ke. Her gambling luck is very good. Second, even if you really want to gamble, don't bet with senior sister Liuxia. Bet together. Whatever senior sister bets, you will do the opposite. They were momentarily dumb. When the blue shirts were gone, the three fellow disciples and sisters who had a good relationship suddenly burst out laughing. Mr. Qin, who has an old-fashioned temperament, occasionally speaks witty, which is still very interesting. Just like when Liuxia complained about Qin Pingon and caused her to lose 10 snows to spend money, Mr. Qin asked if he said he deserved it, would he still be able to see the island owner? When Lu Xia was reluctant to say yes, Mr. Accountant really gave up and deserved it. Bai Ke raised his hand, waved his hand and said to himself, handsome. At that time, there was a man who made money and was about to hold money with both hands. The girl who couldn't hold her and the young accountant's back laughed and thanked him. The man in the blue cotton coat didn't turn his head, he just raised his hand and waved it, probably indicating that you're welcome. Bai Ke clenched his fists in both hands and swayed his orders. It was full of snow money and he said happily, "Ha, I can't let master know about this." Making money and being happy, of course, reuniting with Mr. Qin. Mr. Qin is still so, no different. It seems to be a happier thing. Why are we afraid of master but not Mr. Qin? I think even if Mr. Chen's realm is higher in the future and we meet again, I'm still not afraid of him. Is it because Mr. Qin was born in poverty like us, so he doesn't have any heirs on us, and is he not the kind of pretending to be approachable? But it's not like anyone who becomes rich. Let's just say that Shujin Lake's realm is high and they turn their faces and don't recognize people, aren't they? Isn't it more fierce and ruthless for them to harass others? There are all kinds of methods, only we can't think of them. Yes, there is nothing they can't think of, and now that it is so far away from Shujin Lake, I am afraid if I think about it. That's why. Because Mr. Qin is a good person by nature. You can come up with this kind of reason, but think about it carefully. The Patriarch's Hall on Zhuchai Island is called Baozhu Pavilion. Lu Chongrun stood alone at the door here waiting for Qin Pingon to appear. She has a high bun, a plump figure and a broad forehead. Lu Chongrun habitually narrowed his pair of extremely narrow phoenix eyes, and watched the azure-clad figure approaching. The eldest princess, who had been under the curtain for many years and abbot the government of a country, had been entangled with the sword cultivator from the royal family of the old Zhuing dynasty. She would have been expected to become the first female emperor of Aquarius. Strictly speaking, the first sect to formally conclude a mountain covenant with Luopao Mountain was Lu Chongrun's Pearl Hairpin Island. All beginnings are hard. This incense love is not too small. At that time, all the ancestors of Zhuchai Island followed the courageous Lu Chongrun to Longzhou, settled on the back of the clawfish and established a school which is equivalent to giving up the old family business and starting all over again. Lu Chongrun has not been slack in practicing for a moment in these years. In addition, he uses a water temple as a dojo, so he is now the bottleneck of the Jindan realm. He majors in water law and also cultivates talismans. Otherwise, she wouldn't have caught the crayfish's back on the top of the Vassal's mountain at a glance, because the water transportation is the most abundant here. Because Luopao Mountain had not bought Huanghu Mountain at that time, otherwise Zhuchai Island Zhushirtang would not be in the back of the clawfish. In the spring, Lu Chongrun placed a table directly on the bayou square, put a pot of melons and fruits and snacks of various colors, and personally cooked a pot of tea to entertain guests. Lu Chongrun handed Qin Pingon a cup of misty fairy tea. The sun was shining and a pocket rainbow appeared on the cup. People who are in a long-term relationship like to miss the old. Qin Pingon took the teacup, thanked him and said with a smile, "Now this Hongyin tea has been monopolized by the True Realm sect, and the price is calculated by 2, generally Immortal Manor can't buy it with money." The two sides had just started drinking tea, when a lively girl who was not at all timid came, walking with the wind without restraint. Lu Chongrun introduced with a smile, "My new apprentice is named Yunxiang. It's no wonder that the girl is so courageous and dares to make an assertion to come here. It can only be explained by the Emperor's love. Like Liu Xiao and the others, they absolutely dare not come here to join in the fun." When Yunxiang bowed to Qin Pingon, Lu Chongrun asked her to carry an embroidered stool by herself. Lu Chongrun asked bluntly, "Master Qin Shan is here, I don't know what to do?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "I have nothing to ask for, Lu Daoji, don't have to be nervous, just wander around casually, it's just a visit between the neighbors, Zhuchai Island has helped enough." "How dare you?" Lu Chongrun was suddenly dumbfounded. Wan Xiang, who was sitting upright beside her, blinked. "Tiskese, listen, Mr. Qin can really speak. There are needles hidden in the words of the master, so it is no wonder that there are words in the words of the master, and the master is about to become the second housekeeper of Luopao Mountain. Nowadays, in Aquarius, the Zhushitang has been relocated to Zhuchai Island on the back of the clawfish, and it is regarded as a vassal of Luopao Mountain. These Zhuhai Island chi cultivators don't really care about it. It's good to have a cool back against a big tree, not to mention that Luopao Mountain has such a good atmosphere. It is rumored that the female cultivator of Zhuchai Island never felt that she was able to meet the mountains by coloring." Qin Pingon asked with a smile, "Islander Lu, among the heirlooms, has anyone had the opportunity to form an elixir recently?" Lu Chongrun got angry when he heard this and sneered, "Do you think that all the mountains are your downhill mountains? This Luopa Mountain, it seems that even the nascent soul realm is not taken seriously. Because there are disciples who practice in lotus root blessed land, Lu Chongrun has frequent contacts with Hongxia and Peixiang." Qin Pingon laughed dumbly. Except for Qin Pingon, who is a master, outsiders may not know that little black charcoal who was taken out of the blessed land by him to walk the rivers and lakes together, she used to envy the two of them. One was Wu Yi, the founder of Xiang Mansion. It was the first time she went there to eat and drink with her master. She saw monks, maids, servants, disciples and more than 1,000 people gathered in the square, kneeling down and kowtow, calling out to the ancestors. Nyonglai, this kind of pomp, this kind of battle suddenly shocked Pei Qian. Domineering. Xiao Heitan secretly made up his mind, in the future what kind of success is it? It has to be measured according to this standard. Thousands of scumbags under his command, when they see themselves, they kneel down in a large area, and the old ancestor Pei shouted loudly like thunder. The other is Lu Chongrun from Zhuchai Island. Pei Qian heard from the old cook that this island master Lu was a long princess who followed the government with a curtain. Xiao Heitan thought about it and thought it was amazing. Above, there is a long line of civil officials on the left, and the generals on the right who lead soldiers to fight and kill people like chopping melons and vegetables. Come to bluff people casually, Aunt Lu is different. In addition, Lu Chongrun has been in charge of the dragon boat ferry for many years, relying on the shop left by Nujiadu Baozhai, and is responsible for helping Luopeishan to resell the goods from Beiju Luzhou. According to Nuanshu, his treasury every quarter. It was a huge sum of ferry money. It is second only to the splits collected by Nujiashan ferry from various ferries. Therefore at that time Pei Qian was very kind to Lu Chongrun, and felt from the bottom of his heart that Aunt Lu had loyalty, dedication, and thieves can make money. Admire, must admire. When he was young, Pei Qian was tired and lazy. He could lie down and never stand, and if he could stand he would never move. But only when Yuanxu went to Clawfish to drop by to give gifts, Pei Qian would be extra diligent and would definitely follow. Seeing Lu Chongrun, Aunt Lu shouted warmly and cordially. And Lu Chongrun never let her down and gave gifts every time. A certain hilltop in Luopao Mountain from the bamboo building lineage has its own genealogy, and the threshold is so high that even the mountain master Qin Pingon could not join, let alone Qin Lingjun. There are not many people who can make Pei Qian admire and make Yuanxu appreciate at the same time. Zhuchai Island Lu Chongrun is one of them. Doing things, in the final analysis, is still a human being, and you will see people's hearts over time. Today in general, Zhuchai Island does not say that it is walking sideways in Aquarius. At least there is no need to be afraid of causing trouble. What's more, on the dragon boat ferry before me, Xianxian and Lu Chongrun were also mature faces. Although they basically didn't chat, the female nuns on Zhuchai Island liked to chat more with the guy named Yumi. A man, he looks so good looking, he only needs to talk a few more words and he won't suffer. Unfortunately, Yumi is too taciturn and doesn't like to talk much. He is too thin-skinned, so they prefer to make fun of him and make fun of him. Oh, he occasionally blushes. Lu Chongrun was actually reluctant to talk business with Qin Pingon, but the other party had already climbed the mountain, so she endured the discomfort in her heart and said bravely, I want to renew the contract with Luopa Mountain for 600 years. Together, it is 900 years, occupying a dojo for nearly 1,000 years. In fact, this is equivalent to directly buying clawback with Qin Pingon. Qin Pingon just lifted the teacup and took a sip of the rainbow to drink the tea. In Beiju Luzhou, in the small cave of the Dragon Palace, Qin Pingon bought a mallow water island, which was of great significance to him, at a cost of 80 grain rain money. Of course, this is an extremely low price. With the help of Duke Lingyuan Shenlin Ho Liuan of Longting and Jianhu the duckweed of Jianxian Li Kai, these dignitaries are potential pressures for a water dragon sect. Not to mention Shualongzong himself is also willing to share more incense on the mountain with Qin Pingon. Therefore, Lu Chongrun was embarrassed to put forward the price, thinking that if Qin Pingon refused flatly, she would exchange it with a water elixir secretly stored in the water hull. Qin Pingon thought for a moment and said, in the past 300 years it was 30 grain rain money, so if you renew the contract for 600 years, we will calculate it according to the previous price, and then give us 60 grain rain money in Luopao Mountain Island. Lord Lu, what do you think? Of course, the price is very low, but as I said before, Zhuchai Island has helped us a lot over the years, and I can't help but think of this friendship. If you were a teenager, let alone a 600-year lease, you would just give the whole clawfish back to Zhuchai Island. It's just that the older I get, the more I understand a truth. Even if it is something like giving kindness to others, I have no guilt in my heart. I don't think much about something. There will be two minds. Knowing this truth is not helplessness but growth. Taking care of the hearts of others is not an easy thing to do. Lu Chongrun couldn't hide his surprise. After holding it for a long time, he asked tentatively, no more Guyu money? Qin Pingon gave a thumbs up and said with admiration, Master Lu can do business. I've seen people who haggle in different ways, but I've never seen one who actively raised prices. Island Master Lu squinted his eyes and smiled, is it not my conscience that I'm sorry? Qin Pingon pretended not to understand anything, just smiled and drank tea with his head down. Afterwards, the two of them drank tea and chatted, with a relaxed attitude as beautiful as a picture scroll, and fell into the eyes of the quiet girl beside him. The master and him were not involved in love, but they were both immortals. Leaving the back of the clawfish and approaching Luopao Mountain, Qin Pingon stopped. There was a pavilion on the side of the road and a table was placed inside, but he never took it out. I heard that Bai Xian met a lot of heroes here and finally compiled a hero book. Bai Shou didn't agree. In the end, he had suffered a lot and suffered some downfalls one after another, but Jiu Yifeng Qiuji, who had only met Bai Xian once, was confused and on the list. Qin Pingon walked into the pavilion and took a break. It's just that life is not about wandering around the mountains in the west. If you have visited today, you can visit again tomorrow and the day after. The pavilion will not move and life will always move forward. Just like a trip to the back of the clawfish, Qin Pingon will miss Pei Qian, the pioneering disciple who grew up. Qin Pingon was not in his hometown. Pei Qian went to the school every day to study. He was near Qilong Lane. There was a woman who didn't give up and said that Pei Qian killed her white goose, Xiaohe. Tan lost money but always insisted that it was not the white goose she killed. Qin Pingon could even imagine that the little girl who took out the money had a stubborn face. That may be the first time that Pei Qian has saved money and sent it out. Do you feel bad? And those clay dolls that she hid somewhere. According to what Pei Qian told Zhu Lian and Shi Rou at the time, it was raining heavily and she forgot it accidentally. She didn't beat the drums to withdraw the troops, and they were all scattered by the pouring rain. But Qin Pingon knew very well that he was smashed by his peers, and he probably didn't throw it away, but deliberately smashed it and left it on the ground. Are you angry? But maybe in Xiao Haitan's heart, no matter how sad it is, it can't compare to when he was on the way to escape when he was young. One night his mother, behind her father and her back, secretly hid the steamed buns and then secretly ate them. A lot of hardships and ups and downs can be used as an enemy with a good childhood so as not to fall behind. Just like a cold winter, it can be resisted with nostalgia for the warm spring. The difficult time will always pass. It is also possible that many of the hard work and silent efforts in the later life are all in their not-so-good childhoods, doing an unknown difficult tug-of-war in their hearts alone. This fight may accompany a lifetime, at most a draw and never. No odds. In fact, Qin Pingon has survived it himself, so he will have more patience and compassion than ordinary people, but what really makes Qin Pingon the most soft-hearted are those sensible. For example, a grain of millet that has been wronged but does not feel anything. There was also Pei Qian, who was still a naughty little black charcoal back then. It was the first time that Qin Pingon received a gift on the 5th day of the 5th lunar month. Therefore Qin Pingon has been cherishing it for so many years, putting it in the square inch instead of the nearest thing and always carrying it with him. When I was young to drink, I always liked to use the sword-raising gourd. When I became an adult, it seemed that I took out the sword-raising gourd to drink less often. Me and me are the difference between heaven and earth. Some people have had the love and disputes with this world like lovers, and some people have had hatred and reconciliation with this world like enemies. A young girl wearing a sable hat with red cheeks suddenly appeared outside the pavilion and looked at the man in green shirt who was resting on the table with one hand. Qin Pingon turned his head and asked with a smile, "Miss Xia, what do you think of the scenery on the sword terrace?" Xiego smiled and said, "Not bad, quite good." Qin Pingon took out 2 pots of wine and smiled, "Do you mind drinking while standing?" Xiego squinted his eyes and smiled and strode into the pavilion. They are all the children of the rivers and lakes who are used to walking in the city and the countryside. They don't pay attention to blindness. As long as there is no money to drink, there is nothing to be dissatisfied with. I don't know why, seeing the Qin Pingon before, she is not a fool. Of course the pressure is very high. Don't look at the whirlpool of the time and water of riding Dragon Lane. From beginning to end she was cautiously guarding the sword-bearer, but in fact she was more afraid of the guy Xiao Mo called young master by intuition. When I saw this young mountain master with a warm expression in front of me, it was strange and the pressure was even greater. Xiego asked seemingly casually, "Do you remember what happened before?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Knowing what I see is also a kind of practice." Xiego took a sip of wine and nodded, wondering if he thought the wine was delicious, or if he felt that this sentence made sense. So in the eyes of Shanjuchen, how to settle the infinite heart? Qin Pingon shook his head and said, "I want to talk to Miss Xia about this." "We'll pay for it." "You pay for the wine." "Well, it seems that it's still my drink." Xiego smiled and said, "Think him a layman, or is it a selfish guy who can't chat?" If it was someone else she would have to change her words, such as not urinating in a pot. It's just that now I'm relying on others and I talk more carefully. Wasn't it just because of his inappropriate words that he was kicked off the mountain by Mr. Zhu, and it would be miserable if he annoyed the real master of the hidden official in front of him again. Where can you drive yourself? Buy a house in Huaihuang County? Wouldn't that be worse than that white-haired short melon? Then she might as well spend money directly on the 3 hills including Tiandu Peak. Alas, those 3 sects are not cheap, bullying her for not understanding the mountain conditions and killing pigs. Qin Pingon was obviously unwilling to talk to her about this, changed the subject and asked with a smile, "To be honest, I've always wondered why you like Xiao Mo alone." Xiego was full of sadness at first but finally relieved. During the period, the complex expression and the progressive mood were like a clear stream in the mountain going down the mountain. I saw that she took a sip of wine, sighed faintly and gave a sentence as the answer. All of a sudden, Qin Pingon was completely blinded. Could it be that the big monsters in the wild world are all so literary? I don't know how to worry about this body and I'm most afraid if I see gentleness. Sort of Coming Chapter 984. There are only 1,000 cups of wine when a confidant is drunk, and there is not much speculation. Whether it is with Xiago or Beijing, there is actually nothing to talk about. After drinking a pot of wine, Qin Pingon made a temporary move, said goodbye and said he was going to visit. In Beiyue Mountain Juanfu, the sable-cap girl chased after her and asked her if she could go back to Luopa Mountain. It's not a problem to be relegated to the outside world. It's not a matter of delaying Xiaomo's practice. It is eating, drinking and practicing swords anytime, anywhere. The Ascension realm will only be more complete. The bigger the distance, the less face Xiao Mo will lose. If he loses face, Xiao Mo doesn't want to see her, alas. Death, it's a shame to suffer, man. Hearing this, Qin Pingon actually didn't have the patience to accompany her to chat with her. Just looking at the posture, Xiago seemed to have made up his mind. There is no answer today, so she followed all the way to Piyun Mountain, and Qin Pingon had to stand in the pavilion. Next, let her give her a reason to convince herself. Xiago said that when he returned to the mountain he would definitely be more cautious in his words and deeds than before, and learn the law of riding the left side of the dragon lane every day, and be a man with his tail tucked. If the mountain owner does not believe it, she will just swear an oath in the name of Master Bai Zhe. Can it not be true? Qin Pingon asked her what to do with the business of the New Year's shop in Xianxia, and she was partnering with Zhou Xian to do business. Xiago said that he would definitely not care. He would go to the shop every other day, but it was really difficult to do business. He only said that there are people on Fulu Street and Taoya Lane. Now they have specially assigned people to block her. Fight her wits and courage. Qin Pingon said angrily, "Is there any business that you do that is not authentic? In the first month of the month, you will post a notice on the door of the house. Fortunately, you still have a bottom line. You didn't put it on the door god's face." Feeling aggrieved, he said that I had discussed it with those door gods, and I agreed in advance that I didn't use those mountain-based methods of asking gods to surrender and arresting ghosts and detaining spirits. Everyone said it didn't matter. The old man was calm. Qin Pingon was speechless, silent for a moment, looking at the sable-cap girl with a wrinkled face and a grieved baba. Later, Qin Pingon used the method of shrinking the earth, hiding his figure in a secluded place, and then walked to the foot of Piyun Mountain. As the location of Beiyue Temple in one state, there are many good men and women who come to Piyun Mountain to worship incense, but everyone knows about Piyun Mountain. It is the dojo of Wei Bo, but very few pilgrims can see this legendary Beiyue Shanjun with his own eyes. Xiago finally got a mountain master's decree. If he was granted amnesty, he was in a good mood. The girl with red cheeks swayed to Luopa Mountain. Not to mention, on the side of Luopa Mountain, Qin Pingan's fart is fragrant. There are a lot of flatterers on the mountain, so it's no wonder that she doesn't fit in with the group. The sable-cap girl completely forgot that when she parted just now, she kept clasping her fists and yelling at Shanju Yingming. On the side of the mountain gate, it was quite lively. Xian Wei and Zhou Mili were sitting at the table drinking tea, with Tiao Qilong Lane on the side of the left guardian. In addition, it is rare that Sun Yuanji is also practicing boxing and walking between piles. Sitting here for a while, there is also a boy in red clothes who came from the Zhou temple. Qin shans his immortal aura. Do not expect to chat, just a few glances from a distance will be rewarded. And a white-flowered snake in Chiduan Mountain, as the riding mount of the boy in red clothes, also curled up at the bottom of the table, looking extremely docile. They are all gathered here to listen to Xianwei Daochong talking about Dashan. Xianwei glanced at the local dog. At first, Daoist Xianwei felt very pitiful. He regarded it as a wild dog that was looking for something to eat. He even got some chicken, fish and bones from the old cook. At that time, when the dog raised its head, Xianwei actually saw extremely complex emotions in the other's eyes: grief, anger, disgust, depression, pity. Xianwei was shocked at the time. Could it be that Pindao was despised by a local dog? It was only later that I found out that it was the well-known Zhu Hufa of Qilong Lane. Misunderstandings are misunderstandings. Be kind, be kind. In addition, there is a visitor who has just traveled here, a middle-aged Taoist priest with a sword on his back, with a face as white as jade, holding a purple bamboo stick and a gourd scoop hanging from his waist. Both Zhou Mili and Xianwei knew each other's identities because they had met each other before. Zhou Mili was on the Qingshandu side of Xindu Mountain, and had a good chat with the Daoist Lu who claimed to be Chunyang. Xianwei stopped at the mountain gate because Lu Yen visited Luopao Mountain once before. At that time he drank a bowl of hot tea at the table. and also asked fellow Taoist Chunyang if he was afraid. Lu Yen smiled without saying a word. Xianwei was very happy and said that he was bragging. He also invited the other party to serve as a guest of Luopao Mountain, and he was willing to introduce him. Based on his relationship with Qin Shanju, I dare not say that this kind of thing will happen, but it will definitely not happen. However, Xianwei didn't say that the name Keqing is still not named. You have to leave some room to speak. You can't imitate Qin Lingjun. He speaks firmly like a glutinous rice ball. It's delicious, but it's easy to last. Nourish the stomach. Lu Yan's trip was relatively slow, and he visited the entire ancient Shu land, which is a vast territory. Some of the ruins of the Dragon Palace, which have not yet been found by the Dali court, have also been visited by Taoists. Qi Shi naturally is just visiting immortals to explore secluded places. They are all scenes of people going to empty buildings. The eyes are full of desolation. The world has changed and the vicissitudes of life are nothing more than this. Finally, I took a trip to Huang Tingua and visited the Hanxi River along the way. I read several rare books in the old collection that were inherited and ordered in the Chao family Zhilan building. Looking at the old books was like reuniting with old friends. The ancient books in the world are always divided and combined like this. He then passed the Baihu River Xiang Mansion and then walked along the mountain road from Hangzhou town, past Chiduan Mountain and walked slowly all the way to this unfortunate mountain. Previously, the Taoist looked at the lively gate of the mountain and nodded and smiled. In general Immortal Mansion this kind of picture will not appear. There are so many realm divisions along the way of cultivation, and the mind will inevitably fluctuate along with it. In a mountain sect, many cultivators are considered to be successful in cultivating their minds. It is difficult, but it is not uncommon, but it is a miracle to want people to be one. On this visit, Lu Yen had something to ask for and he had a mortal experience and he needed the help of Lord Qin Shanju to protect the Tao. This Taoist protector does not have high requirements for realm. Not to mention Qin Pingon, who is personally recommended by the most holy teacher. I heard the little girl in black say that the mountain master went down the mountain to the town. In fact, I went to check the accounts at Qilong Lane. Millet Grain asked seriously, "Is Chunyang Xianchong anxious to see the mountain master? If there is an urgent matter, she only needs to recite Wei Shanjun 3 times in her heart, just like knocking on the door. Wei Shanjun on the side of Piyun Mountain can listen immediately, then as long as she is in the Beiyue boundary she can immediately talk to the good person mountain master." Lu Yen smiled and said, "Don't worry, Pindao waits for Qin Shanju to return here and then climb the mountain together." In addition to tea and melon seeds on the table, there are 2 bags of dried creek fish taken out from a cotton satchel with millet grains. The last time I was at King Shangdu, Meili was reluctant to take out the only bag of dried fish left to entertain guests. In fact, after that, Zhou Meili developed a habit. Every time he goes out he must contain 2 or more bags of dried creek fish in the cotton satchel, which is nicknamed Zhu Shi Tang by Meili in case of emergency. Xiego is very kind now. Seeing the young Taoist priest with a wooden hairpin on his head, now his real name is Nianjing and his Taoist name is Xianwei, Xiego is completely relieved. Her reasoning is very simple: you can't pick up 2 pieces of silver one after another on the same street. Who else can I meet at this old site of Lizidongshan? In the past, the world's first Taoist, one of the 10 richest men in the world, has already seen it. She can't have such good luck anymore, can she? The Beiju Luzhou in the north is a huge continent, and there is only a real fire dragon lying on the ground. Can it enter her eyes? As for Tong Yezhou in the south, Yuguizong Jian Xie Wei Ying? Or the sycamore tree in Xinyala? Or the Wanyao sect in Sanshan Blessed Land? As a result, when Xiego approached the mountain gate she first saw the middle-aged Taoist priest with an unfamiliar face, Danfeng eyes, 3 long beards. This Taoist priest looked like a realmless person. In an instant Xiego felt a sense of oppression like an enemy. 10,000 years ago, after being with Xiaomo for so long, he never felt this strange. Maybe only once Xiaomo almost sacrificed all his life to fly. Jian, and then she chased after Luobeatin. The Bixiao cave master appeared and advised her not to cross the border. If she crossed the border, don't leave, just stay. People cross the border, keep people. Legs cross the border, keep legs. Feijian crossed the border and left Feijian behind. Damn it, Xiego still feels aggrieved when he thinks of this stinky cow-nosed old man. There is no reason. Such a big Aquarius, why is there such a hidden dragon and crouching tiger? Xiego narrowed his eyes and slowed his pace. That inconspicuous table really looked like a dragon's pond and a tiger's den. Seeing the thin sable-cap girl, the boy in Zhou Yi stood on the table with his hands on his hips and greeted with a smile. Xianxia is back. I heard Wei Xian say that you are going to ride the dragon lane to earn money for your private house. Already. Xiago nodded with a straight face, but he and Xinyunji smiled brightly and said, Sister Tsun, rest. Fools are easy to deceive, so Xiago has a very good impression of Xinyunji, unlike the incense little man in the Zhoqinghuang temple. Don't look stupid, he is actually a fine person. I saw a little girl in black standing up. It was the little water monster who made the white-haired boy shout to form a black and white double evil but didn't agree. If Xiago had left it before, he would have stretched out his hand to hold the little girl's head and shook it a few times, but he just ate a bite to gain wisdom, and now he smiled and said, Yo, it's the legendary Right Dharma Protector, it's a pleasure to meet you. Fortunately, my name is Xiago and I am Xiao Mo's daughter-in-law. Xianwei spit out a sip of tea, choked and coughed and quickly wiped the table with his sleeve. Zhou Li's eyes widened even more. What, Mr. Mo has a Taoist companion? Xiago finally looked at the Taoist priest. Where is this old man? Lu Yen smiled and said, The world is home and the life is cloud and water. Xiago said, I think with the ability of the Taoist priest, even if you learn the talisman Yushuan of the Middle Earth Divine Continent, and have 3 or 5 sects at the same time, it is more than enough. Lu Yen smiled and said, The girl is wrong, I dare not compare it with Senior Zhou Xian. Xianwei can't listen anymore. It's like complimenting a scholar. You can say that people are pedantic and unparalleled, but you can directly say that the other person's knowledge is similar to Yaxing and Wenxing. This is not a face-to-face scolding, what is it? It seems that Miss Xie's thinking behind closed doors at Qilong Lane is in vain. It is estimated that it has something to do with Jialao Shenxian not sitting in the grass head shop. Otherwise, if you learn from Jialao Shenxian to succeed, Xiago won't talk like that. Not a coincidence. Xiago sat cross-legged on the bench. Where did you guys talk just now? Continue when I don't exist. Zhou Li held the tea bowl with both hands, took a sip of the tea, put it on the table lightly and smiled happily. Just now, Daoist Chunyang helped each of us put 2 or 3 pieces of mugwort in the tea bowl, saying that it is to practice qi. If a scholar drinks this tea for a long time and supplements it with a Daoyin technique, it will be able to drive away the cold, strengthen the yang energy and keep the spirit alive. Xiago stretched his neck and glanced at the 3 leaves of mugwort in the little girl's bowl. It was actually made of mugwort leaves cooked with real fire from the sun. The Taoist master is proficient in ancient methods? It seems that the teacher has a long history. How about 10,000 years of cultivation in later generations? Xiago traveled to Beiju Luzhou and took a look at it. The techniques of worshipping the moon and picking stars are all common, except for the practice of the sun, which is relatively rare because the threshold is higher, and just now Xiago glanced attentively. Xiago looked at the subtle veins of the few leaves of mugwort, which fell in her eyes, and they were all visible as big as a mountain range. Xiago was naturally better than Xinyunji, the layman who was in the midst of happiness and did not know his happiness. There are more experts in the doorway, and the Taoist priest in front of him is very likely to be an expert who can go to that kind of Huiyang palace for a walk. In this way, isn't he half the same as himself? Lu Yen smiled and said nothing. Xiago asked again, Is the Taoist priest still a swordsman? Lu Yen said, I know a little about swordsmanship, so I can barely be considered a swordsman. Xiago asked, I don't know how you think about cultivation? This was just a casual question, but I didn't think that the other party would really give the answer. I saw the Taoist priest smiled and said, The ancients made laws, food must use fire so the people of all generations can survive, and the house must be driven by water so the billions of trillions of spirits can really stand. Lu Yen stretched out his finger and pointed to the great sun in the sky. In the eyes of Pindao, the most precious thing in the sky, the one that is visible but not hidden, can be obtained by everyone, so there is only a red sun hanging in the air. The Taoist took another breath and exhaled a breath of clear spiritual energy. The white mist was hazy like a cloud of water, with a red line floating and sinking, like a slender fire dragon flying through the clouds and raining, the great treasure of man, although hidden. If you don't show it, you can still seek it from yourself, just this one breath of true yang. This thing is pure and pure. People who cultivate the Tao slowly see merit and condense into a group. They are their own pure yang. Therefore pure yang is immortal and pure yin is pure yang. Ghosts are half of yin and yang in human beings, and they are friends of ghosts and ghosts. They are either ghosts or ghosts. They are only practicing, self-validating their minds and self-cultivating their spirits. Xiego smiled and said, "The truth is good, but it's a little too general and it sounds like a fog not touching the sky or the ground." Lu Yen smiled and said, "Like this girl Tsin, although she is not a qi practitioner, as a pure martial artist practicing martial arts and practicing boxing, together with qi refining has the same effect. Like a fire dragon walking on water, the qi and blood are a vast river, and the bones and muscles are stretched mountains. Moreover, it can be seen that Miss Sen's boxing master is extremely accomplished in martial arts, especially the combination of boxing and breathing, which can teach others refreshingly. Because this person taught Miss Sen 4 completely different breathing techniques, so the trajectory of infuriating qi is different between day and night, winter and summer, so it is possible to keep pressing the situation without hurting the body and soul. Spirit different from ordinary people." Sun Yuanji was stunned on the spot. Mr. Zhu taught her the 4 paths of true qi circulation. Of course, she had been practicing boxing for so many years. Could it be that his slowness in breaking through is not because of his own poor qualifications? Mr. Zhu has always said that she has good martial arts qualifications, and is it not a comforting word? Xiego smiled and said, "The way is long and tall." Wu Yan smiled. Xiego is still not clear at the moment. This land Xianxia with the Taoist name Chunyang is one of the 10 future heroes in the future in the eyes of the most holy master. Qin Pingon did not go directly to the temple on the top of the mountain along the sacred way of worshipping incense, but held a walking stick and hiked to the second peak of Piyun Mountain. Among the crowd of climbers he came to the Wenchang Pavilion on this mountain to burn incense and make a wish. Yasushi is no different. In Piyun Mountain there are more than a dozen temples and Taoist temples. In the past, the Dali court once selected 6 mountains and 10 temples on the territory of one continent, all of which are famous Buddhist temples. Among them, the Guangfu Temple in Piyun Mountain is the emperor of the Song dynasty of Dali. In the imperial order, the imperial pen inscribed the plaque, gave the purple clothes and the Dharma name, and once ordered the abbot to enter the capital to write the golden scriptures. Halfway up the mountain there is a pavilion for resting feet. There is a tea stall next to it. Most of the porters in the mountains drink tea at the tea stall. Qin Pingon is here. It turned out that it was Wei Shanjun who came here in person, and of course he used a trick so that the common people didn't know each other. This Beiyue mountain monarch, whose reputation has spread far and wide in other continents, has the essence of golden body, and now his realm cultivation is equivalent to that of a fairy. What's more, the entire Beiyue realm is Wei Boss Dojo, and Wei Bo can be regarded as most of the Ascension realm. Qin Pingon asked the stall owner for another bowl of tea. After Wei Bo was seated he asked, "Why didn't Mr. Imo come?" He was stopped by Qin Shanju again. "Isn't it appropriate?" Qin Pingon immediately replied, "When will Wei Shanjun hold a night tour banquet? I seem to have never drank the fine wine from Shanjun's mansion. I have regrets in my life and must find an opportunity to make up for it. There is an old saying that living for a long time is cheap and frequent kisses are also sparse. Luopao Mountain and Piyun Mountain have no such concerns. But in fact Qin Pingon doesn't know any of the chief officials of the Shanjun mansion, the little 30th Shanshui deity. Now Luopa Mountain has a lower sect. If there is another lower sect in Beiju Luzhou Luopa Mountain and Qingping Sword sect, wouldn't it be necessary to take advantage of the situation to upgrade to the authentic and the upper sect? Think about such beautiful things. When the time comes, there will be a few more good deeds and you will definitely have a place in the selection of the top 10 sects in the world. What you? It hurts my feelings. It has to be us." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Tong yes, his excavation of Dadu has already been made and construction will start soon. I asked Qingping Jianzong to leave a gap for you. Between 1,400 and 1,800 grain rain money. Do you have any ideas? If Pai Yunshan's treasury is tight I can help to make it up first." 4 ordinary qi practitioners, participating in the excavation of Dadu may be the exchange of money and loss, and even the more money you earn the farther away you are from merit. The ranks but to some extent can help their respective sects and families to earn some blessings, but these blessings are not very likely to flow, usually only carry out around Dadu. The business of Zhai is prosperous and the financial resources are prosperous. This is the only reason why Zhangji must set up shops in all the ferry ports. Zinyala Qingtong, which is closely related to Izhou's luck, is an exception, but for the gods of mountains and rivers, they all have real merits and virtues, and they are guaranteed to make money without losing money. Wei Bo nodded and said, then I will take out 2,000 grain rain coins and make up a whole number. Qin Pingon said in surprise. Wei Shanjun take out 2,000 grain rain money in one breath without frowning? The treasure house of our Beiyue Mountain Jun's mansion must not be gold and silver? Come here, why don't you take me for a walk? Go for a walk and open your eyes. Wei Bo twitched the corners of his mouth. It's you, not us. Qin Pingon smiled and said, the sunset is still and the mountains and rivers are quiet. Let me listen to you and say yes or no. Wei Bo said helplessly, Qin Yingwen's limericks and collections are already famous enough. But Wei Shanjun can't deny it, it's still very fitting. Wei Bo suddenly frowned slightly. Qin Pingon asked, what's wrong? Wei Bo explained, you Luapa Mountain, there is a wandering Taoist priest. I can't even see the depth of the other party's Taoism, but the other party immediately noticed my spying. The tea bowl rippled with clouds and mist and a picture emerged. I saw that there was a table sitting around the entrance of Luopao Mountain. Among them was a middle-aged Taoist priest with immortal style, but this landscape painting quickly dissipated. Qin Pingon glanced at him and said with a smile, it's normal. This senior's surname is Lu Mingyan, and his Taoist name is Chunyang. He is a true Taoist, a well-deserved Taoist, and he doesn't want people to know where he is. Don't talk about my Luapa Mountain or your Piyun Mountain. I am afraid that even at the foot of Sui Mountain, the gods can't notice it when they travel around. Wei Bo said in admiration, Chunyang? Such a big Dao name, ordinary people can't bear it. Wei Bo carefully inspected Xinhu for a moment and asked in his heart, I remember that in the history of Huang Tingwa, there was a Taoist priest who threw a wine glass into the river and turned it into a white eagle. Is there a relationship with this Taoist priest? Qin Pingon nodded and said, it was the handwriting of this real person of Chunyang. Back then he and Qing Shanchong traveled the river together by boat, and improvised while drunk. This is how the water goddess of the Baihu River came into being. Wei Bo hesitated. Qin Pingon shook his head. About this pure young Taoist who likes to play the world there is also an old incident. The old yellow calendar is full of old stories that have been covered in dust for a long time. For example, Aunt Feng, who lives in the fire temple in the capital, once had a landscape illusion of burning wormwood and burning the dragon's forehead. Another example is the blessed land of hundreds of flowers in the past. Many flower gods once turned to a man surnamed Chui who was in luck to defend against Aunt Feng. And this person also became the founding emperor of the Daong dynasty, and he has always been very fond of incense with Baihua blessed land, and there is still the custom of hanging flowers in the whole country. At the beginning of the dragon-slaying battle in the past, the real dragons in the world and many dragon palaces and waterhouses had also pinned their hopes on the help of a man who had attained the Tao, and it was Chunyang Lu Yen. Wei Bo stopped asking questions and complained, what do you plan to do with this little girl who goes by the pseudonym Xiego? A sword cultivator who had completed the Ascension realm, was from a wild demon clan, and he stayed in the Beiyue realm like this every day, and Wei Bo felt terrified. So far, Wei Bo has not leaked the secret to the officials of the Shanjun mansion, saying that there is such a number one person wandering in Huaihuang County, lest they be frightened. Qin Pingon began to distance himself. She is the admirer of your Mr. Mo. You can't complain to me. Wei Bo said, I just made a mistake in the calculation and now the Shanjun mansion has to spend money everywhere and it's stretched thin. How can one word be so poor? The 2,000 grain rain money, I beg the Luapa Shangquan mansion to help me make it up. I can set up a new one. And I owe you. Qin Pingon had to promise. Ziga sighed, I will restrain her. I will definitely not let her mess up. If there is any mistake you can just find me. Wei Bo asked, the Taoists of Chunyang have all shown their faces at the gate of the mountain. Why don't you hurry up and entertain guests? Qin Pingon smiled and said, I'm definitely going, but don't be in a hurry. Let me accompany Wei Shanjun to finish a bowl of tea. You can't be too fond of the new. This is what makes you hard when you speak from the bottom of your heart. There are millet grains in charge of hospitality, and there is no need for him, the mountain owner, to be the icing on the cake. If the visitor hadn't started in Ascension, we would not even bother to move out of the right protector from Luapa Mountain. But if it was Qin Lingjun, you can see if Qin Pingon is in a hurry, the custody would have rushed to the entrance of Luapa Mountain. Qin Pingon drank 2 bowls of tea so that Wei Shanjun didn't have to send him off, so he left gracefully. When Qin Pingon arrived at the entrance of Luopao Mountain, Lu Yen got up and said with a smile, nursing. The two sides climbed the mountain together, climbed the stairs and went directly to the top of the mountain. Lu Yen said straight to the point, I have something to ask for. Qin Pingon almost spoke in unison with similar meanings, asking for something. Lu Yen smiled and said, Master Qin Shan will talk about it first. Qin Pingon was not polite and said, it may be necessary to ask the Taoist priest for a fire talisman. The higher the rank, the better. Lu Yen knew it in his heart. Is it because of Wen Yunhua Python's escape? Qin Pingon hesitated for a moment and asked, My little warm tree, Zhou Xian is in the Zhilon building of the Chao family in Huang Tinghua. Could it be related to the Taoist priest? Lu Yen stroked his beard and said with a smile, Pin Dao used to draw a talisman on the beams and pillars of a book building in Shu. The original intention was to protect books, but it was not a Zhilon building at that time. As for how to fall into it, Chao's hand, I think it's just a matter of chance. Qin Pingon bowed his thanks. Lu Yen waved his hand, there's no need for that. Lu Yen then asked, When Yun fire python is not easy to escape and the natural conflict between water and fire is difficult to reconcile. Does Master Qin have a plan? Qin Pingon nodded with a smile. In an instant Lu Yen looked around and smiled slightly. It turned out that he was already in a long river of time that was formed by Qin Pingan's two flying swords. The text is a mountain, the text is full of movement and the weather is good. Lu Yen said, With this background Qin Wanshu will be more than enough to enter the Jade Realm in the future. There is not much difference between the fire talisman of the poor way or not. Seeing that Qin Pingon was hesitant to say anything, Lu Yen smiled and said, Pin Dao came here to ask for help, how could he be stingy with a talisman? Qin Pingon asked curiously, I don't know what the chief is asking for? Lu Yen said, protect the Dao for a while. Qin Pingon wondered, with the current state of the younger generation, is he really capable of doing this? Lu Yen nodded and said, Pin Dao is not worried about whether Qin Shanju is competent at all. He is afraid that Qin Shanju protects Dao with too much effort, and Pin Dao himself has nothing to do. Qin Pingon asked, Can the Taoist master elaborate on protecting the Tao? Lu Yen smiled and said, Don't worry, you still need to wait for a while. Qin Pingon took back two flying swords and Lu Yen took out two talismans from his sleeves. Qin Pingon said, One is enough. Lu Yen smiled and said, Just treat it as a good thing in pairs. The fire talisman is given to Qin Wanshu. As for the other water talisman, it is for your right guardian. Back then the little girl in black was holding the rope of the cotton satchel tightly at the Xindu mountain in Qingshandu, because she was entangled in whether to take out a bag of dried fish to entertain guests, or leave it to Miyu, and she was so nervous that she was sweating. Unconsciously she kept frowning and frowning, making Lu Yen wonder whether to laugh or cry, and it was difficult to persuade the other party to keep the dried fish. After that, the two sides stood by the railing and Qin Pingon and Chunyang Zhenren asked for some practice. The sky and the earth are all frost, the spring mountain is like a smile, the top of the peaks, the long wind is mighty. Sword of Coming Chapter 985. Qin Pingon just took out the sword-raising gourd, and Lu Yen also took off the gourd around his waist and smiled at each other. Probably this is what Bai Yes poems call a mountain and a quiet person, flowers blooming on Zhuoshan. Lu Yen raised his head and poured a mouthful of self-brewed water. Do you know the origin of these mountain peaks in Lizhu Cave? Qin Pingon nodded and said, Cui Dongshan once said some inside stories. There are a total of 62 hills in the mountains to the west, most of which are migrating from the mountains of the ancient Shu. There are more than 40 of them. I guess it is the handwriting of Mr. Sanshan Jiuho, and I will see if there is any chance to ask in person. But things like the Luopao mountain under our feet, the Piyun mountain over Weibo, and the mountain with the dragon-slaying platform are all relatively weird. There is no written record. The latter was recorded as Jiaoyou Mountain by the secret archives of the Ministry of the Household of Dali, and was banned during the Chunwei period. According to our local dialect, it is commonly known as Longji Mountain. Mysterious, maybe the only one who knows the real route is Grandpa Yang in the backyard of the pharmacy in the past. Lu Yen smiled and said, Grandpa Yang? You mean that Qingtong Tianjun? Qingtong Tianjun, one of the 12 high-ranking gods, was the ancestor of the Earth Immortal man who mastered a flying platform in the past, but he became of the human race. Just like a lonely man who lights a lamp and keeps the year old, he has been in the world for 10,000 years. Qin Pingon nodded lightly. If it wasn't for Grandpa Yang, he wouldn't be alive today. There are some things that he can endure when he grows up, but he can't endure it when he grows up. In fact, Qin Pingon originally had a lot of words and he wanted to have a good chat with this old man. On the road of life, teenagers and young people always move forward as if the old people have stopped, and the former is just a memory when they look back. Qin Pingon still clearly remembers that the first time he saw Grandpa Yang, he was squatting outside the door of the pharmacy when he was young. It's only natural for businessmen to make money when you buy things. I'll owe you the credit first, but you have to pay back the money later and you can't owe a cent to the shop. In the end, the old man asked the child if he understood, and the child stood up, ignorant, and just handed out the money bag that was always tightly held in his left hand. Lu Yen raised his eyes and looked into the distance, his sight stretched all the way like a mountain range. No matter what is right or wrong, the scenery of the mountains and rivers has not changed much, and he said with emotion, "In the past I often traveled to the ancient Shu land. I only remember the sky and night of Shu. It is rainy, the dragon is born, and the sword light rises and falls with the wind and rain, which is spectacular. Just talking about that Longji mountain, if I remember correctly, it was first located on the border of ancient Shu. There used to be a cave called Quokeng Cave. Exiled, happy to come from the sea. There are many ancient names of this mountain such as Jinin, Tianbi, Windmill, Liaoning Lamp and so on. Unfortunately, it was destroyed by the sword fairy and the dragon. The first mountain range stretched all the way into the sea, which could be connected with the breath of a certain submarine dragon palace. There is a rushing river in Hongzhou town. The water is extremely strong and it is turbid. The gourd wine is brewed with the water in the heart of the river there. In ancient times there were often thunderstorms during the day which echoed the current Yuzhou. Therefore the so-called "this water leads to the sea" in the local county annals is not a word that goes through the chisel. Li Jin, the water of Chongdan River who opened a bookstore in the small town, is actually one of the ancient dragon species, but Li Jin may not know his origin, and has always mistakenly thought that it was the dragon current from Lizhu Cave overflowing into Chongdan. Jiang, he was able to open his mind and refine his shape, or was taken away from Lizhu Cave by the ancient immortals with the Dragon King basket, but it was not the case. As for the dragon-slaying platform which was used by Jianxiu to sharpen the sword and regarded as a treasure in later generations, it actually means literally ancient times. The dragon-slaying platform, one of the two execution platforms in the heavenly court, was chopped to pieces by Jianxiu in the battle of ascending to the sky, and fell to the world, scattered among the heaven and earth. A lot. There is also a piece on the Sword Qi Great Wall. If Pindao remembers correctly, it is your Taoist companion's family treasure? Qin Qinglu, the man who slashed the dragon, used to practice swordsmanship in Quokeng Cave for many years. Can be regarded as the place where he ascended to the Tao. Later, the so-called Xianxia Dongshan was actually only a part of Quokeng Cave, which is equivalent to your Luapa Mountain. Jisei Peak. He killed 14 sword cultivators who set up a life-and-death situation in one go, 8 of them in the 5 realms, 2 of them in the fairy realm and the remaining 6 nascent souls. Hi, but the supernatural power of every sword cultivator's life-born flying sword is very suitable for siege. What is the killing power of the sword cultivator in the Yuan Yingjing realm? What will be the effect of siege killing with the flying sword's natural magic power? You are from the Great Wall of Sword Qi. You should. The most clear thing is that the result was still killed by Qin Qinglu. After this battle, more than 10 sword veins were broken in Aquarius. It started to slump. This Taoist Chunyang, who is indefinitely gathered and scattered in the 2 worlds, communicates the ancient and the present and has many illusions. On the road of life we seem to be flipping through books to read others, and we don't know when we can become books that others read carefully and repeatedly. I remember Jing Dafeng once said a truth: when a person is middle-aged he is not confused at 40. If a person is 40 years old and still does not believe in fate, either his fate is good, or he is not enlightened. Brother Dafeng, who doesn't speak dirty words apart from being a little uglier and having less money in his pocket, is still quite unique. Qin Pingon said sincerely, as the old saying goes, if there is an old man in a family there is a treasure. In the future, when Senior Lu successfully exits the border, I don't know if I can ask my senior to find an altar to preach for the monks in one continent. As for the location, whether it is Luopao Mountain, Piyun Mountain or Nanjian Kingdom Shengazong Huangliang Pai Lushan, or any place in Beipingzu, it doesn't matter. After all, this Chunyang real person, strictly speaking, is the own family of Aquarius. Lu Yen was non-committal about this but just asked with a smile, My family doesn't talk about the two families. First there was the battle of Cicada slaughtering the Cave of Heaven, and then there was the battle of slaying the dragon. Since Pin Dao is a native monk in Aquarius, he has a lot of fate with many dragon palaces. Why didn't he make a move twice? Isn't Qin Shanju curious? Qin Pingon mentioned the sword-raising gourd in the shape of a vermilion wine jug, and lightly knocked it against Lu Yan's purple gourd scoop, like clinking a wine glass. Pure yang without ignorance of cause and effect. After drinking each other, Qin Pingon wiped the corners of his mouth, and Lu Yan smiled knowingly. When you speak you know. If you stay silent you know. Qin Pingon suddenly smiled and said, I visited Yidai Peak earlier and heard an old senior say that Xiao is doing things, but he just cares about himself, everyone is fine. Lu Yan nodded and said, cultivation is one's own business if the world is the home. Qin Pingon was silent for a moment and asked, where will Senior Lu travel next? Lu Yan said, I plan to go to Beiju Luzhou. Pindao and Baigu Zhenren once traveled to Baiyujing Green City. In addition there is a special situation. I owe Master Lu a favor. He Xiaoyang of Qingliang sect as a new disciple of Lu Zhangjiao, became the head of the sect, and her realm has risen all the way to the current Immortal. Because she has a deep blessing and a good aptitude for cultivation it is easy. This time Sword Immortal Baishang uses seclusion as bait. He Xiaoyang has a very soft and firm personality, and will bite the hook if he is not careful. He must have no worries about life and death, but with Baishang's behavior this kind of fish that bites on its own will be caught again. When he was thrown into the water the fish would definitely suffer a lot, but because of the face of Zhangjiao Lu and Tianjun he would save He Xiaoyang's life, but it would definitely hurt her Dao fundamentals. Falling one level to Yupu is impossible to escape, plus it can make He Xiaoyang just miss the upcoming opportunity, and it will not be easy for He Xiaoyang to step into the Ascension realm step by step. He Zai Liangguang has a senior brother Chao Rong and at most Gu Qing. Even if the three of them join forces, they are still very reluctant to face an Ascension realm sword cultivator who can go out of retreat. It's too big. So Pindao intends to go to the north to have a look after leaving Luapa Mountain. Qin Pingon nodded and said, He Xiaoyang will definitely find trouble with Bai Chong. Lu Yan smiled and joked, Master Qin Shan, you can have so many karmic entanglements with Headmaster Lu. You can count it all over the history. Just saying this is enough to be proud of yourself. Qin Pingon nodded and said solemnly, I have read some Buddhist classics over the years. In addition to the classics the rest of the koans commented on the ancients and sang the ancients, and they were no less than 8,000. Then I discovered one thing: the eminent monks of all dynasties quoted Lu Qin. There are even more allusions in the writings than all the Confucian sages put together. So no matter who you look down on you can't look down on this Headmaster Lu. Lu Yan nodded and said, no matter how much we outsiders look at Lu Qin, it may not be Lu Chen's true height. Lu Yan suddenly asked, I don't ask why you mention the origin of the mountains in the west. Could it be that Pindao is just showing off his knowledge with Lord Qin Shan? Qin Pingon thought for a moment then tentatively asked, is it reminding the younger generation this is also a kind of Daoization in a broad sense? Lu Yan nodded and said, this may be one of the fundamental differences between Taoism and Buddhism. Qin Pingon frowned slightly, and then his heart suddenly became clear, but he had doubts again. After all, there is a saying in Mahayana Buddhism that no living beings can't become a Buddha. Just as he was about to say something, Lu Yan smiled and said, this is just the reconciliation method of the later ancestors of Zen. One, it has little to do with the earlier Tathagata Zen. Senior Cui once gave a saying, pure martial arts, 7 realms and 8 realms die in their hometown, 9 realms die in their own country and 10 realms end in this continent. And this Lu Zhu, whose Taoist name is Chunyang, once crossed the threshold of the 14th realm with 1 foot, but exited the door himself, a Taoist real person who chose to travel far away to the Qingming world, which is very easy to explain. Just reverse the premise. A certain sable-cap girl who has been eavesdropping on the conversation on the top of the mountain is dizzy. What are you talking about? Qin Pingon took a deep breath, put away the sword-raising gourd, turned sideways, cupped his hands and clasped his fists and said solemnly, Junior has a big question, so dare to ask Senior for advice. With a smile on his face, Lu Yan waved his hand, indicating that Qin Pingon did not pass the 6 ears. Qin Pingon was horrified, but he didn't even notice that Xiego was eavesdropping, because a restriction similar to a pocket sword array was just set up on the top of the mountain. Lu Yen put his fingers close together, seemingly at will with a slight push. Then there was a pure sword intent that did not have sword energy which merged with heaven and earth. But at the same time, there was also a hidden sword energy on the other side of the mountain road, which was pushed back to the top of the mountain by Xiego. Lu Yen teased, "Do you two count as a courtesy exchange?" Qin Pingon was slightly embarrassed. Lu Yen said sternly, "You are on Tongye continent. Have you tried twice to enter the Jade Purity realm without success?" Qin Pingon nodded and said, "The demon of the heart is unexpected. I never thought that it would appear in this way. The first time I was caught off guard, and the second time I thought I could rely on the 6 solutions including the rain chapter. It still didn't work out." Lu Yen said with a smile, "Xiuhu did give you a big problem." Qin Pingon smiled bitterly and said, "How ran in the world if I mention the Great Wall of Sword Qi because of my return to my hometown? I need a last-generation hidden official in the upper 5 realms." So when the Fortune Cave woke up, Qin Pingon, who was still in the nascent soul realm on the side of the Sword Qi Great Wall, inexplicably became the Jade Pure realm. This is actually because Cui Ying gave Qin Pingon a realm of jade between authenticity and falsehood. To be honest, Qin Pingon is indeed a jade that breaks the bottleneck on his own, but Qin Pingon himself forgot the specific process. To be false, it is Qin Pingan's mind because Cui Yu erased his memory. There is a gap in the long run. It is a great legacy, but Cui Yu's solution is simple, waiting for the future junior brother himself. He can return to Yupu after falling. As for Qin Pingan's realm falling and returning again, Cui Yu probably doesn't care at all whether there will be complications during the period, causing the road to rise 1 foot and the devil to rise 1 zhang. From Xiahe's point of view, if you can't handle such trivial matters well, you don't have to go to the Qingming world to humiliate yourself. Lu Yen didn't ask why the inner demon but just reminded Qin Pingon to be more cautious and not to rush to restore the Jade Realm, and then quickly changed the topic. After all, people's words are terrible and everyone speaks of gold. Mr. Si's actions are understandable. Is the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, is it a Jade Pure Realm Sword Cultivator? It is a watershed. Yes, when it comes to Qin Pingon it is mostly a compliment. For the boss Xianxia dares to use people, but if it is only nascent soul, the Howren world's perception of you personally, and even the entire Sword Qi Great Wall will change. There are so many things in the world and life is not easy. Most of them are just watching one lively event and then waiting for the next one. How can I have the time to find out? People are not ancient. The heart of the ancients is that studying is not easy. Very deep, of course. Today's people also have the advantages and strengths of today's people. These are 2 paths. The ancients went from 1 to 10,000 and they disprove one of them. First, as the Buddhists say, the Dharma door is boundless and one vows to learn, and eventually one can see the unique Dharma door. For example, when my husband was in the capital city, he could not help but sigh with emotion. If you want to talk about the truth and knowledge in the book, if you only talk about the breadth and not the depth, how can the former sages be able to compare? So is it possible to just pick up a scholar from the academy now and throw it away 10,000 years ago? It is estimated that the original group of scholars will come to ask for advice one by one? Qin Pingon nodded. Of course he could understand the difference, but the hardships here were self-aware. So much so that Qin Pingon even guessed that the inner demon he encountered when trying to break the bottleneck of the nascent soul realm was very likely to be something he would only encounter when he tried to enter the 14 realm after Ascension realm. Here. Lu Yen smiled and said, "Master Qin Shan has a good senior brother." Qin Pingon was speechless. Lu Yen put aside the gourd again, turned his head and glanced at the north and said with a slight sarcasm, "Sai Wing loses his horse to know that it is not a blessing. By Chong and Na Tian one secretly colluded, trying to control the circulation of Kendo in one continent, that is, the 2 sides. In the end, it failed. Otherwise Pindao will return to Aquarius continent now, but he doesn't mind the sword cultivator of Ascension realm or the identity of junior sister Zhou Xian. Pindao is not vegetarian. Including Xiego, the group of people who drank tea at the same table with Zhenren Chunyang. In fact, after Qin Pingon and the others took the lead in climbing the mountain, they felt that they were full after drinking tea, so they began to climb the mountain and enjoy the scenery. Among them, only Tsin Yuanji continued. Practicing boxing and walking, on the contrary, they are faster than Xianwei and Zhou Mili. After so many years, she doesn't feel bored after walking in the same way. Today, being smashed by the real person of Chunyang, Tsin Yuanji has even more fighting spirit. The boy in red robes rode on the white snake. The first time he climbed the mountains and mountains it was not tiring. It was not considered a prohibited act, because before Zhou Xian and the foreign Taoist priest climbed the mountain he probably felt sorry for his hard work, chatted for a long time, and even a special decree of the mountain master was specially issued to allow this incense little man named Zhiqing to climb the mountain with the white snake named Bai Hong by the little guy, and then come back to Luopao Mountain Dianmao. Xianwei Daoist, nothing will stop them from going up the mountain. The boy in Zhu Yi is talking about the righteousness of the rivers and lakes. He bites the bullet and helps to introduce the white-flowered snake from Chiduan Mountain to the mountain owner, Bai Hong. But after learning that the white flower snake was temporarily named Bai Hong today, Zhou Xian praised the incense villain, saying that the name was not small because according to the records of the Confucian Book of Rites, Ji Chun the moon, that is, at the end of the spring on the tail of the spring of a year, there has been a saying since ancient times that the rainbow begins to see, and the rainbow begins to be born. Which is the rainbow? If the name Bai Hong had not been known to outsiders like him, or he would have succeeded in refining in the future, it would be good to use Bai Hong as his real name. The white flower snake had already become enlightened and was overjoyed to hear that, but she was unable to speak for the time being, so she shook her head quickly. Outsiders pointed it out and it was not her own name. If she used it as her real name, whether there was a taboo on the mountain, would she not be able to get the recognition of heaven and earth, and she would often be punished and struck by lightning. Qin Pingan smiled and looked at the real person Chunyang beside him. Lu Yen stroked his beard and nodded and said with a smile, "It is not easy to name the monsters in the mountains, neither the real name is too big, it can't bear the blame, the road is too wide, but it is self-obsessed. I don't know where to go and it shouldn't be too small. It's best to fit in with a landscape. If you don't worry about someone leaking the secret here in Luopa Mountain, and in the end everyone knows your real name, then it's okay to be called Bai Hong." Qin Pingan cupped his hands and smiled and said, "Qin Pingan in Luopa Mountain, I wish fellow Daoist Bai Hong a successful form." Lu Yen clenched the sword with one hand, smiled and said, "The rainbow cave is blue in the sky, the yin and yang shines in the sun, the strong man stands up to the sword, and the qi stimulates the white rainbow. Pure Yang Lu Yen, I wish fellow Daoist Bai Hong a successful form refining and a smooth practice." Xiago, who has been watching from the sidelines, is amazed. A white-flowered snake that is not as good as an ant. With just a few words he has earned a good fortune. The name Bai Hong came from the boy in Zhui who made nonsense, and then went to Qin Pingan to make a bridge, intending to let the Taoist Chunyang come to the boat to give the answer. And finally Lu Yen personally recognized Bai Hong as his real name. This is just like the difference between the talisman and the talisman of the Taoist sect in the Qingming world. A talisman is stamped with a real person's talisman, and its power can be greatly increased. A talisman is in the hands of a judge like a subordinate in a government office, and a real immortal is like a head of the government that leads the people. Only the decree with the official seal can be promulgated, which is justifiable. In the dark, the real name of this Chiduan mountain white flower snake is just like the real person Chunyang came to call the seal, and Qin Pingan of Luopao Mountain served as the witness, accompanied by the signature flower print, the second. Here there is a lot of knowledge hidden around just such a trivial matter. Xiago can see how much Qin Pingan's mind is, how deep the city is. It's no wonder that in today's wild world those few ascension realms who fill the vacancy of the throne are all obsessed with young hidden officials, always thinking that the Confucian temple and the saints will be able to abduct a yuan from the Qingming world. Why doesn't Bai Zhe simply go directly from the Haoran world? Then Qin Pingan put a sack on it and then threw it into the fat powder cave. The hero was saddened by the beauty pass and the raw rice was cooked, but it was not his own family. When Xiago quietly gathered up that strand of sword energy, the little guy named Zhiqing at this moment sat cross-legged on the back of the white snake, riding a high-headed horse, with an aura of contempt for the world, and could not help but sigh. "Xianwei Daoist, you are not a big official but you have the most rules. You look at our Qin Shanzhu, how kind and friendly, everything is negotiable. You are a janitor. Don't you feel ashamed? Luopao Mountain, the biggest official is Lord Qin Shan. So the smallest official hat is probably the gatekeeper of Daoist Xianwei." Wei Xian said in an angry voice. "What am I ashamed of? The Prime Minister's concierge's third-rank official. The responsibility is not difficult to deal with at ordinary times. Do you want to let the cat and the dog climb the mountain casually?" Xianwei looked down at the boy in Zhui and said with a smile, "When you are a high-ranking official, you are indeed approachable and amiable on the surface. but it is only because you can't speak harshly with you at all. When you go up a few levels, you will have the opportunity to have more opportunities with Qinshanju. When you get in touch, you will understand a truth. The boy in Zhu is bad. He has already prepared a small account book, but his face is deliberately surprised and he urged, "Oh? What a reason, how to say it, what will happen when I become a big official?" Xianwei said, "You will find that our mountain master is really approachable." The boy in Zhu failed to succeed and gave a thumbs up to the Daoist Xianwei. Xiago rolled his eyes. "I was obedient and the atmosphere of Luopa Mountain is really good." The left guardian of Qilong Lane, who had been able to cultivate a human form long ago, but refused to do so, followed Pidian by the sable cap girl. It is afraid of Peiqian. There are 100 reasons the past is unbearable. But it naturally got close to this sable hat girl, but it seemed like something unreasonable. Otherwise it can't be because the other party's name has the word dog in it. When they came to the top of the mountain, the sable cap girl saw the two figures beside the railing, so she wanted to get close and talk a little more, mainly the Taoist priest with the Taoist name Chunyang, which made Xiago feel that it was not easy, so I had to ask a question. The matter whether the other party has been to the Huiyang Palace is different from the bright moon in each world and blessed land. Later generations of great monks can build long-term dojos. Even 10,000 years ago, there were countless moon households who were able to join the ranks. Among them, only in the round of Great Sun in the past 10,000 years, no cultivator has dared to say that he is the master, and the realm is as high as the white scene. In the round of Scorching Sun in the wild world, she can still only be regarded as the master. Stay temporarily. This involves an inside story because even if the sun and the moon are all imitations of a high-ranking god, the latter tends to be more realistic, while the former is more mysterious, with countless numbers outside the sky, but the largest the mystery lies in the fact that all the big suns hanging in the void can lead to the only Huiyang Palace. Even if the old heaven becomes a ruin, this palace still exists and is intact, but it is different from the monks. Going to the same Huiyang Palace, they seem to be automatically diverted, and they go to the river sections located in different time and long rivers. After the real master, I believe that no one wants to see each other. The summer resort in the world, the Guanghan Hall in the sky, the primordial Qi cave was carved out by chaos, and the old dragon monopolized the Shuijing Palace. The Dragon Palace and the Water Mansion all like to build the Water Palace, the dog festival in the world, and the autumn here is very autumn, so it is praised as a cool country by the Xianxia. And that Danshao Jiangke Huiyang Palace is now said to be one of the imperial families by Taoists. In Xiago's view, it is not nonsense. As for the ancient dragon clan, one of the thresholds for proving the Tao is whether they can go to the Huiyang Palace to listen to the Taoist teaching from the real person. Xiago could see that this Lu Yan was closely related to the ancient Jialong. Seeing Xiago moving, Zhou Mili seemed to be going to the good man's side, so he hurriedly stopped on the road and immediately felt it was inappropriate, so he quickly turned to his side, gently grabbed Xiago's sleeve, lowered his voice and said anxiously, "Miss Xia, the mountain of good people mainly talks about business affairs with the old immortal Lu. Miss Xia will go later, no rush, just a moment." Xiago shook his hands, then put his arms around his chest, turned his head to look at the little water monster about the size of the white-haired boy. The right guardian is such a powerful official. The grains of millet scratched their faces. Qin Pingon also put his arms around his chest, leaning against the railing, looking at the sable cap girl who seemed to have a bad memory. Xiao Mo, with a yellow hat, green shoes and green bamboo stick, appeared beside Xiago out of thin air. He first nodded his thanks to Jinren Chunyang, and then stretched out his hand to hold Xiago's shoulder. Xiago raised his hand and was about to touch the back of Xiao Mo's hand, but Xiao Mo immediately raised his elbow against his cheek. The sable cap girl was not angry but happy, grinned, tilted her head and said vaguely, "You come on, I'm playing with the right protector." Millet grinned and nodded vigorously. Yes, we are just kidding. Haha, Mr. Mo, your Taoist companion, Miss Xia, her cheeks are flushed red and she is quite tall. Xiao Mo retracted his hand and rubbed his eyebrows. I don't know how to explain my relationship with Beijing to Xiaomi. Qin Pingon waved to the millet grains. The millet ran quickly and stood still. Qin Pingon took out the water talisman that was not known for the time being and said with a smile, "Senior Lu gave it to you. You're welcome, just accept it." With an embarrassed look on his face, Mili bowed to the old fairy Lu and quickly opened the cotton satchel, and carefully invited the talisman into his Zhu Shi Tang. It's amazing, and I have another general under my command. Lu Yen smiled and said, the name of this talisman is Dragon Gate, which was originally created by Pin Dao himself. Directly into the Yellow River Xiadongshan. Xiaomo smiled. If this is not a big talisman, there are too few big talismans in the world. As expected of a master who was called Lu Zhu by the young master, he was able to appear in the town demon building together with the most holy master. Xiago sighed faintly to say that envy is not enough, a talisman that can let the water descendants in the world directly cross the Dragon Gate, but the problem is that in this talisman the word pure yang really means like. The two-door gods and the little water monster held this talisman, and at a critical juncture the more monks on the mountain, the more they knew the importance of the stakes. Millet grains can't close their mouths with laughter. Nuanshu sister Jingqing Hongxiao worship Yunzi. There is only one precious talisman. It seems that it is not enough. Qin Pingon stretched out his hand to hold his little head and said with a smile, don't think about giving it away, keep it for yourself. Millet patted the cotton satchel and said happily, if you don't give it away, you won't be willing to use it, you must treasure it. Previously in King Shandu, one big and one small nibbling on melon seeds, the little girl in black sat on the stone, swaying her feet leisurely, chatting with the guests, the things about Luopao Mountain and Qingping Sword Sect, I will never say much. Half a sentence. She has a lot of experience in the rivers and lakes, but she was worried that the senior would be bored, so she just chatted about her own little things. Nothing more than watching the fat, thin white clouds passing by the door and helping her. They take names one by one. The Taoist Chunyang said with a smile, the honor and disgrace lined up outside the door, and the blessing followed after the pour. The little girl felt very reasonable and applauded softly. Then I tentatively said, Daoist Chunyang, I have a friend, just a friend on the mountain. Her realm is too low, but the mountain is very large, so my friend is always as small as his ability when he goes out. What to do? At this moment Xiego was standing beside Xiaomo and said solemnly, Xiaomo, I ran into a pavilion on the side of the road and I met the mountain master by chance and we had a good chat. Your son and I were really good friends and he even offered me a drink. There is a pot of wine. This is not made up by me. If you don't believe it, you can ask your son to go later. Our mountain master also invited me to go back to Luapa Mountain, otherwise it will be my strong and stubborn temper. Can you run back here by yourself to make fun of yourself? In the tent. By the way, Xiaomo, don't get me wrong, don't think too much, although you are alone, but you can't trust me, you must trust you, my son. In short, we were at Xingting at the time and we were discussing knowledge and learning, getting along with each other and having a drink. It was a pleasant conversation. I think Shanju is a really good person worthy of admiration. The family background is a bit poor, but the book does not say a truth. Unlimited Zhu's disciples died of hunger. How many white houses came out of Gongqing? Look at Fulu Street in Taoya Lane. There are many high-class children, that is, with Xiaofu Xiaogui is a little bit on the side, so he doesn't look at people directly. He wants to have a limited future, but we mountain owners are different. We have earned a big family business based on our skills, but he is still immobile and young. Lightness, prudence and boundless blessings. I think I have figured out a truth. There are really smart people in the world. They are dumb and graceful and they are far-sighted. I have a better eye for picking people. By the way, Xiaomo, I have been studying diligently recently and my knowledge has skyrocketed. That Susie writes lyrics is unique, the frame is absolutely irresistible, and he also learns from your son. Put aside the metric for the time being, in the guest time poetry volume, colored brush inscriptions on tongue leaves, good sentences ask for peace. Xinhua news reign in the sound, it's New Year's in spring and there are even more beautiful flowers. If you like it, use it. The word safe is embedded in the poem. Your son will definitely like it when you hear it. At first Xiaomo planned to pretend to be deaf and dumb. The more he heard the back, the more awkward it became. He couldn't bear it anymore. He said with a dark face, how much knowledge are you going to steal from Mr. Zhu? Xiego Shui scratched his face and said with a dry smile, there are only so many words. We scholars who copy from the east to the west all borrow knowledge from each other and do not need to return it. How can it be called plagiarism? A rickety old man with his hands behind his back just walked up the steps with a smile, stopped for a moment, and when he heard Xiego's last words, the old cook immediately retreated, went back to the house and slipped away. Xiaomo, Miss Xie, you two just take care of me and I'll cook my dishes. Millet with sharp eyes saw the figure of the old cook and immediately said goodbye to the good mountain master and Chunyang Daoist, and said hello to Mr. Xiaomo in the middle, and ran to Zhou Xian all the way. Walking down the steps together, he patted the cotton satchel, then put his hand to his mouth and whispered, "Old cook, there is a treasure." Zhou Xian held back his smile and asked, "What baby, can I eat it?" Millet put her feet together, jumped down the steps and laughed. "Guess a riddle, walks arrogantly, the demon panics." Zhou Xian suddenly realized, it turned out to be a Pagoda Town demon talisman. Millet grinned and said, "It's different. My name is the Dragon Gate Talisman. Pei Qian can treasure her Pagoda Town demon talisman. It was difficult for me to see each other before." When Pei Qian was a child, it seemed that only when he was in a bad mood would he take out the talisman, put it on his forehead and play with it. Zhou Xian nodded with a smile. When he was a little black charcoal back then, when he encountered something he was afraid of, he liked to stick a talisman on his forehead to strengthen his courage. Otherwise he was tired from walking. "I have increased my internal strength by at least 100%. In the words of Pei Qian at that time, I had a house on my forehead and I was swaggering around the rivers and lakes. How could I be tired? Follow master's side, climb the mountains and mountains together and ride the clouds and mists." "Yes, how did you grow up?" Zhou Xian took millet grains to the outside of a house, knocked on the door, and someone in the courtyard was practicing sword stove staking. He opened his eyes and said with a smile, "Mr. Zhu, right, protector?" Zhou Xian nodded with a playful expression. "Zhao Xiu, you will finally worship the true Buddha from tomorrow." Zhao Xiu was at a loss. Millet's lips moved slightly, reminding Zhao Xiu of the answer. Because on the way here the old cook told her that Hao Rinshan was officially a master, and for the first time in his life he taught boxing to his disciples in a real sense. Zhao Xiu instantly became nervous. Zhou Xian smiled and said, "Zhao Xiu, it's right to be nervous. After all, I have been young for 30 years and qualified to learn boxing on the second floor of the bamboo building. There are only 3 people. I believe there will not be many more in the future, maybe even the third one. People are the last person, so cherish them." The 3 learned boxing on the second floor of the bamboo building: Qin Pingon, Pei Qian and Zhao Xiu. Qin Pingon and Pei Qian learned boxing from Cui Qing. From tomorrow Zhao Xiu will learn boxing with Qin Pingon. On the second floor of the bamboo building, there are 4 pure martial artists in total, teaching boxing and learning boxing, and as a result, there are 3 great masters of the limit. Because Zhou Xian had an intuition, under the Zhao tree in front of him would be the closed disciple of the mountain master Qin Pingon in Boxing 1.